economy. Unless we cut down our imports, we cannot rise as a nation. There are certain basic things that we can produce ourselves, but we are not supporting our people to produce it. The last time I went to Upper East, the farmers who farm rice there, they had excess rice that they didn't know where to take it. And yet, I come and hear that National Buffer Stock allowed somebody to import rice from India that had expired, and they came and rebagged the rice and served it to our children in secondary schools. When we have fresh rice from Fumbisi that nobody is buying, when government comes, no government agency will buy foreign rice. We'll all eat our local rice. We'll buy local rice. Go to Accra, go to Kumasi, go to Tamale, go to the regional capitals. Land that belongs to all of us. Houses that belong to all of us. Some were built by Nkrumah, some were built by Champo, some were built by Rawlings. They have taken it and sold to themselves. Recently, I was watching a video. VRA workers were demonstrating because MPP wants to sell VRA. But it won't happen because I know NDC is going to win. And under an NDC government, nobody can sell VRA, I can assure you. When the leaders of MPP sleep, the person they dream about is John Mahama. Any night they sleep, it is John Mahama they are dreaming about. And that is why Nana Akufo-Addo says Akufo-Addo Mahama administration. It came out of his mouth because every day he's dreaming about Mahama. The Ashanti regional chairman, he said, so when you go and vote for John Dramani Mahama. They say, hey. And just when I was coming here to Odumase, I saw another video. Their running mate, Napo, he was saying who they should vote for. So he said, vote for John Mahama. Then they whispered to him. He didn't hear. He said, so when you vote for Mahama. Then they said, no, Baumia. Nyakamwa, and it's a statue. Yakoha, normal kosi statue. Nipa unyem free abemu. I was saying we free abemu na and kai wejuma pa. Na omokas omo bo abaso. Ni akosi statue amao. And so unyam koi. And na oko wa opa o statue huntoma. Ezu. Nasani eno. Enye ankamedie yegasa memfa me statue nkosi baby amaye adwuma pa bia enye ankatama habo me de ba ko besi yo. Ezu anka Kotuko Airport Terminal 3 me de ba ko besi yo. Anka University of Ghana Medical Center, Mede Bakubesio. Anka Kwame Nkrumah Interchange, Mede Bakubesio. Anka Kaswa Interchange, Mede Bakubesio. Anka KJTR market, mede ba kubesi yo. Ezu. Anka obehu me statue of Ghana hanyina. And so she baby or this statue no ko see ya. Enjuma oya wo ho nyina onwie. Hospital a omudi ko see, hospital name yenwie, yesinwie. Eyi interchange na yesi no China for no yenwie. Takrade market settle edwa no yenwie. Quite no pony run about a statue nisi so no yenwie. Ezu omo de baby omo say edru no eye omo nko niembe bonia aka no ho ban moka say eye by election bi wa say no moka ndum bi omo de by am say yedi o chaso poku sikano yedi ezu eza enti omodi sika beba minim se nipa na ojina ma omo no sika ne ta ho enti odi beba oba mo jindi na monto sanjom no yedi o minim ni din nso mo dem fa ni din hye ho yedi o yo mo dem minim ni din enti mo de enyom no mo fa ni din hye ho na mo nji sika ni ndi enso eda ni duru ho a monto abapa na mo hwe mo asetena na mo hwe se ne afie wotwe ni enyoma sei amaga na fo nyina na monto abapa China for boy you see Rollins Abreso everything there is not been rehabilitated into Osha Kwana Eko from Yaba you see a second national theater in Kumasi. If you say Kumasi, at the center of the arts and culture in this country. And so I don't see why we can't make budgetary allocation for the creative arts. And every year, finance minister or the kind budgeter, you pay a special budgetary allocation for the creative arts. Now, you are paying for arts near year allocation, capacity building, we will put it under that budgetary allocation. To further bolster our creative industry, we'll support local content creation initiatives and ensure that our digital content creators, particularly our youth, have the resources to develop content that promotes Ghanaian culture, the Black Star experience. And we are the main policy driver for the creative arts and the tourism industry. Now, under this Black Star experience, yeah, we're Pan-African Month, African Fashion Week. And the African fashion, you be fashion designers now, or more designing nice. You be food fairs, caterers near the and then people will come and sample the various dishes. I feel so. Tourism promotion. Sa Bosomono, we will organize buses, domestic tourism. Into while person you pay a small fee, and then we'll make accommodation arrangements. Into a Mole Park now, person you go to Mole Park, enjoy the place for some days, and then you come back. If you want to go to Volta region, ecotourism, Kakum Park, everywhere you want to go, Sena you be promoting domestic tourism. Submission, ewie nsɔhwɛ.
Somisha. Maybe a yen in Soshe. And no Nakufa Dubai, me Pama Chomo Somisha. Me Pama Chomo Somisha. Me Pama Chomo Somisha. And no ne yan Soshe and ne. Ezu. Now ne Ose of a home. And no call Takradi now, no, in the statue of Kusiho. On no alcohol Pahuntoma. What to be that? Ezu. I was say on my penibia unya hobrase. Nipa ne was on mobile abaso. No more come for. And ya one kasa. No akoya statue. Now they are basi ho. No one kasa wako. Mumbo some mame. No ako Pahuntoma. What to be that? Ezu. No ako university bia. Yama doctor. Abra odasu yo man penyo. Anka odi ewie na ko nom ka say oh ye twa wejuma o ya de say enti ye pese wo ba ne bo abaso ne ma honorary doctorate university e wo Ghana he nyina we chimo munsa mo mama no doctor no nto mi nimbe bi o de ko ezu eza enti agena sa bibia mbeka ho biom ni omo ba ya no ma ye no. And so be said, my buying a wasso, also my buy a bano. A best sanya, my buying a ye. Na abaye a buying fufro. Na my ye, my sister, my buying. Again, and send Basabasani. I know maybe I'm sorry. Me family phone. Na my share and your ma AC, or share social media, TikTok. Instagram, Facebook, Opera News, na o share nyoma AC. Na angwangwasem, me ko share ya. Me unse MPP4. Oma ye omo advert. Bro focus on oma cho say incentivize the youth to go into poultry production.
He has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of...
Good morning to you, and of course, welcome. It's another Saturday, and we are live from the ALHAJI for Dr. Kwame Nkrumah studios of Pan-African Television. We bring you a live ALHAJI and ALHAJI, the mother of all talk shows. And of course, we are also live on Radio Gold. We are live on social media, Pan-African Television. That's YouTube and Facebook. When you go on those platforms, do share a moment and comment on the issues we'll be discussing. Thank you for your time. This morning, we are having our pre-2024 election conversation. Our discussion today is about the elections. There's a lot to talk about, so we'll go through them one after the other. First thing we'll talk about is a spate of misinformation and how to deal with it. Then we'll move to the preparations by the Electoral Commission. Of course, just yesterday, there was an IPAC meeting, and there were still many issues to be resolved, including the fact that bags of ballot paper that turned up in the Eastern region, one of them has seals broken. And there were many questions asked about why that happened. In some constituencies, they're talking about shortage of ballot papers. So they did not print up to the numbers that they needed to print to in some constituencies in the Volta region. So we're talking about preparations by the Electoral Commission, including the fact of restricting access to the media. Then we'll move to the overall security situation. The IGP has been given assurances that these elections will be safe and secured. We'll be doing an assessment of that. Then in our fourth discussion, we'll talk about the state of the political parties, their readiness for the elections. We'll go through that, and then we'll conclude with predictions of the outcome. One man, in fact, one entity that has become famous for predictions in these elections, the Global Info Analytics. They went on record yesterday. Their prediction is that there will be no runoff. And their prediction is that former President John Dramani Mahama will win the presidential elections and the NDC will win a majority in Parliament. We'll be talking about those issues today. Joining us in studio to have those discussions is a man who has seen it all, but not one who only sees. but we'll talk about what he sees and his reservations. Always not afraid to express his opinion. Kwame Kwesi Prajina is General Secretary of the Socialist Movement of Ghana and is in studio with us this morning. We're also joined by Dr. Ramsey Fuseni. Please. Inusa, okay. Ramsey Inusa, Dr. Ramsey Inusa. He is a senior national communications team member for the Movement for Change. And he joins us in the studio. Doc, good morning. Good morning. Yeah. Nice to meet you for the very first time.
Yes, it's a pleasure.
And then we'll be joined by Lawyer Joyce Boa-Mokhtari, who is spokesperson for the John Dramani Mahama campaign, to complete our panel for today. It's a panel of 3. We'll spend time on all 5 discussions today. Once again, you're an important part of the show, so do share your comments with us. A big thank you to affiliate stations across the country. Let's start the discussion. And let's start from the matter of misinformation and how we'll deal with it and how we have been dealing with it in these elections. I will start with Doc. Doc, good morning.
Good morning to you. And let me take this opportunity to say very good morning to our senior most comrade, Kwesi Prajina. It's a pleasure meeting him for the first time here on set. And a very good morning to the good people of Ghana. On behalf of my boss, Honorable Alan Kojo Tremantin, I send greetings to all. The issue of media misinformation and disinformation has plagued a lot of electoral processes across the world, and Ghana is not immune to that. And this is as a result of the proliferation of social media, which makes it quite difficult, because an open space media, anybody can upload any material using pseudo accounts to try and achieve a certain goal. And it makes it very hard for governments to try and clamp down on it. But other countries like China, right, has been able to create, I would say, a formidable firewall that has censored the media space. And some critics will say, well, it's an attack on press freedom and all that, but I think it is working for them. Because if you upload any false information and trying to manipulate the populace opinion, right, the structures they have in place will deal with you. And that is why in China, platforms like WhatsApp, Facebook, YouTube, and the rest are not being used unless you use it through a VPN. And this is as a result of the Chinese government deliberate attempt to mitigate the issue of misinformation and disinformation. And I think that in Ghana's situation, we need to build stronger institutions, right, and support them in terms of resource allocations and technological innovations to be able to mitigate the issue of disinformation. You know, we sit down here and within seconds you see that somebody would put up a news with your own logo, let's say Pan-African TV, and people perceive it as being legitimate because it has the tagging of Pan-African or any other reputable media house in Ghana. And I think that if, as a government, I think this government has a sole responsibility to ensure that we have a media space that is censored, but would not impede on the rights of the individual citizens. And I believe that the use of AI, right, in analyzing the metadata of videos and the credibility of information that is spilled out there would be able to help us fact check some of the news that is out there. And this election has been plagued with a lot of, I would say, very whimsical and very capricious and dangerous disinformation and misinformation agenda. And if care is not taken, it might plunge or undermine the electoral processes that we are currently going through. And so Ghana is not immune to this phenomena. I think that with the right policies and regulations, we can be able to mitigate disinformation and misinformation. But we, under the Movement for Change, have a formidable solution, right? We want to empower public institutions with blockchain technology, AI, and machine learning tools, so that collectively we can be able to mitigate the issue of misinformation, disinformation. And I'm of the view that the Ghanaian government should copy models that the Chinese government has used. Even though we're a democracy, I think that we should promote our own data centers that can harness and harvest the data that is produced in this country. Most of the data that is produced in this country, right, goes through these foreign multinational companies and the data centers abroad. But we don't have our own, I would say, social media space that can be able to allow governments and other CSOs have a deep, I would say, involvement with the management and collection of data, and how we can be able to mitigate the issues of disinformation and misinformation. And I think that it's time we support our entrepreneurs in this space so that we can bring the best out of our digital entrepreneurs to build our digital infrastructure for us. I hear somebody call himself Mr. Digital, right? But I have not seen that. I mean, Ghana harness its potential in terms of digitalization. And I think that there's a big gap. I am privy to be a product of the Silicon Valley of China. And so I know the value of promoting technological innovations and development, especially in our tertiary institutions, which we seek to do under the Movement for Change through our Start Your Own Business initiative, backed by the Entrepreneurship Empowerment Fund, so that going forward, I want to see a Ghanaian-like WhatsApp platform, right? Where if you're going to use that platform, it's linked to your Ghana card. And I don't know if you're quite privy to the new law that has been passed in Australia that bars kids below 16 years to use all these various social media platforms, including TikTok. And so if Ghana can implement such stringent laws and mechanisms in place, it would allow us to reduce the number of pseudo accounts that are on these various social media platforms that propel false news. We also need to enhance international collaboration with other countries so that there can be a nexus in our ability to mitigate the issue of disinformation and misinformation. Because most of the, I would say, vectors that propel misinformation, most of them come from a lot of foreign countries off the shores of Ghana, right? And you know, the advantage is that you can't trace it. And so the police and other agencies that are supposed to fight or tackle this menace cannot be able to trace such accounts. And I believe that with international cooperation, we can be able to mitigate this phenomenon and crisis.
Thank you. Thank you very much. In fact, I think it was 2 days ago when the initial statement of the EC came out about the shortage of ballot papers in some constituencies. When we picked the statement, we're wondering if it actually came from the EC, because you have become very careful about what you put out.
Exactly.
Yeah, so very, very cautious. In fact, I moved to Kwame, because he's somewhere minding his business. Before then, he heard that he had declared for someone. He had to respond promptly. Comrade, good morning once again.
Well, first of all, I think it's important for us to recognize that those who use disinformation and misinformation, as tools of electioneering, election campaigns, are nothing but untrustworthy criminals. That's what they are. Now, if they are untrustworthy criminals, what it then means is that if you find any political party or individuals affiliated with political parties engaged in misinformation, they are telling you not to vote for them. don't vote for them. You can't trust them. If today, 7 days before an election, they are engaged in misinformation, how can you believe or trust that if you give them your mandate, they will do the things that they promise? These are liars, plain-faced liars. These are people who dwell on deceit, and that's the message they're sending across. So anytime you come across disinformation, try and find out who is peddling it. And if you find out who is peddling it, your decision ought to be that that person is not worthy of your vote. Simple. It's not complicated at all. You understand? If they will lie their way to power, they will not keep any of their promises. And that's, for me, very, very significant. Now, you see, Sena, if ordinary, citizens, and I mean very ordinary citizens, are engaged in misinformation and disinformation and so on, it doesn't worry me so much. It's a source of worry, but it doesn't worry me so much. But when you have political parties, which are in government, which intend to be in government and so on, engage in disinformation, it must be exceedingly worrying. Now, we have to take note of the fact that all the polls suggest that public trust in governance institutions is coming down. Public trust in the Electoral Commission is coming down. Public trust, even in the political parties, is coming down, and so on. So disinformation only helps to dip the public trust in governance institutions. And I think that is a very dangerous thing which needs to be combated. Now, Sena, I'd like to use a few examples. There's this advert which the New Patriotic Party campaign team put out. It's one of the most horrible political adverts I've seen in my life. There's an advert which uses actors. And the scene is that there's a lady who wants to employ a driver. And if you watch it, what they're telling us is that the driver is a replacement for president. And you know this Baumia's whole thing about give me the steer and so on. And I'm sure that you've seen that advert. So in that advert, somebody who obviously is Baumia, from the way the thing is couched and so on, comes up and he says, well, I've been a driver's mate, now I want to take over and so on. And clearly, it's presented in very favorable light. And then there's this guy who comes, and the actor makes you believe that it is John Mahama. I'm sure that you've all seen that advert. And John Mahama is portrayed as a drunkard. Senseless drunkard. You understand? Now, this is an advert which should never have been played by any self-respecting media. Never have been played by any self-respecting media. Because it has no empirical basis. I mean, there's no way today that anybody can make the claim that John Mahama is a drunkard. No way. And yet this thing is made to stick in the minds of people that John Mahama is a drunkard, and that if you give this stake to him, he will handle it recklessly and so on. And this is not an advert, by anybody. It's an advert by the campaign team of Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. I feel sick in the stomach. A few days after this advert was put out, there was another advert from the NDC, which was equally sickening. This advert which claims that even though Bawumia claims to be a Muslim, he eats pork and drinks alcohol. What? Where is that coming from? I know that it is a response to the unethical advert which portrays John Mahama as a drunkard. I know that. It came as a response. There's no doubt. But what I would have expected the NDC to do is to complain about the low level that the NPP advert sent us to. You understand? Rather than repeat what they have done. So these are two clear examples of political adverts by political parties which are in excessive bad taste. And I think that they should be withdrawn immediately because it doesn't help any of us. Now, there has been another one. We are talking about misinformation and disinformation. My brother, I couldn't believe it. We are not talking about serial caller here. You are actually talking about the regional chairman of a political party. Listen to me carefully. Regional chairman of a political party. And this regional chairman of a political party, and I'm talking about Untumi, actually states on his own television station, and he says that, oh, Professor Sena Opoku-Agyeman is the second wife of John Dramani Mahama. Massa, can you believe this? That she's not even from the central region. She's a Northerner and so on. I mean, what is this intended to achieve? This garbage, what is it intended to achieve? Now, let's say that she's even a Northerner. It is true that she's a Northerner, and so what? In Europe, there was the case of two twins, not two, one set of twins. One of them was president, the other was prime minister. I think it was in Czechoslovakia or Poland or so. You understand? What is the big deal? This election is about the people of Ghana selecting people that they believe can solve the economic problems of Ghana. Okay? The level of our indebtedness is staggering. The rate of inflation is uncomfortable. Bottom line, prices of everything is rising. You know, the prices are just shooting into the skies and so on. That is what we want to resolve. Where people come from, whether they are Northness or Southness or Westerness or Easterness and so on, how does that reduce the rate of inflation? How does that improve a situation in which we have to spend 128% of total national revenue on debt servicing, debt repayment, and public sector emoluments? It simply doesn't make any sense. And as a fact, Professor Sena Opoku-Agyeman is not and has never been married to John Dramani Mahama, the presidential candidate of the NDC. No evidence. The evidence cannot be found because it has never happened. And yet this thing is put out by a member of the National Executive Council of the New Patriotic Party. Unbelievable. And this has gone without sanction. There's no sanction from the party, no sanction from the regulatory authorities, nothing. So the impression we have created is that it is okay, normal, you know, for such things to be said, and so on. Now, this week, there's another piece of disinformation which is making the rounds. And it makes me feel that those engaged in it actually believe that the people of Ghana are stupid. You understand? Now, this piece of garbage, you know, simply is that the NDC flag bearer went to Moscow and that he signed an agreement with the Russian oligarchs to hand over the minerals of Ghana, especially oil and gas, to the Russian oligarchs. Sena, in what capacity? In what capacity can today Mr. John Dramani Mahama hand over our natural resources to oligarchs? In what capacity? There is no capacity. And which businessman in the world will sign an agreement with him for him to hand over our oil and gas? Does it make sense? But yet, this is something which is being pushed so strongly, so forcefully, and so on. And you see, the reason why I think that people who do this have little brains is that their brains are so small that they think that we can believe this garbage. That's the problem with them. Their brains are so small that, first of all, they have convinced themselves that if they put this garbage out, we will swallow the garbage. Recently, the Ghana police told us that they had arrested somebody who had been on one of the media stations to say that there will be 2 elections, and that the first election is for the first 7 people on the ballot paper. And there will be a second election for those from 8 to 12. Okay. Of course, this is obviously disinformation. Disinformation calculated to confuse people and ultimately lead to the rigging of elections. We'll come to that later, and I'll deal with that. Now, what have we done? The chap is arrested and is promptly given bail. He's walking around free man. Now, the law says that those who make such pronouncements, who violate the law using media, the media houses are also accountable. In fact, the media houses, right now as we sit here, if I make libelous statements and so on, Pan-African television is liable. Okay. So how come that this single individual is arrested, promptly given bail, no other action has been taken, and is walking about a free man? What signal are we sending? What happened to the liability of the media house, which allowed this misinformation to be spread on its channels and so on? But you see, he's not the only one. There's another guy who also on another network says that, look, this election, if you want to vote for number 1, you thumbprint number 1, finish, and you put it in the ballot paper. If you want to vote number 2, you thumbprint number 1 and thumbprint number 2. If you want to vote number 3, you start from number 1 and end to number 3, and so on. What has happened to that person? Master, what has happened to that person? It's unbelievable. And we can go on and on and on. Another classic example is a video which is circulated about Dr. Tony Edu. Dr. Tony Edu apparently granted an interview to a radio station, and you know Tony Edu and how he talks. Sometimes he likes to go round. And that's what cost him. Okay. So he's asked a simple question: who would you vote for? Or who should Ghanaians vote for? And says, vote for Bawumia if you think so and so and so and so and so. And that being an NDC member, I would ask Ghanaians to vote for John Dramani Mahama. So the fakers didn't have to do a lot of work. They just cut him at the point where he was saying vote for Bawumia. Took the statement completely out of its context and so on. So he comes out as saying that, look, the best bet is Bawumia, vote for Bawumia. When indeed that is not what he said. That is not what he meant. But because of his own style of communicating and so on, it became so easy just to portray Dr. Tony Edu as campaigning for ALHAJI Mahmoud Bawumia. I mean, this is unethical by any standard. Completely unethical by any standards. And we allow it, to go. There's a case of Mr. Asedu Nketia, and a similar thing is done to him. And in the end, he's portrayed as saying that if the NDC should win power, it would cancel the free SHS program. What he did, all he was saying was simply that this traffic light system will be abolished, and that the government would secure funds in order to guarantee the future of the project. And this has been all over. As a matter of fact, this has also found its way into an official political party advertisement. And the people who did that advert knew that it was false. Can you believe it? They knew that it was false. Even if they did not doctor the tape, they knew that it was not the truth. And yet, they put it out as, an advert and so on. Now, the other time I was speaking to one of my friends in the media. I was speaking to Kwame Sefakai about these developments. I said, just ignore them. This is the silly period. This is what is called the silly period. Yes, you can call it the silly period. You can call it anything, but these are not things to be ignored, because we ignore them at our own peril. What it means is that people on December 7th are going to cast ballot on the basis of disinformation. What it means that a lot of people who are going to cast their votes would not be casting their vote on the basis of the concrete issues before us. And that's a subversion of the sovereignty of the people, and I think that we need to take that very, very seriously. You see, I'll give you my own example. I mean, I'm a bit uncomfortable, but let me do it because it's interesting. I see somebody sends me something on social media indicating that I had endorsed Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. Not just endorsed him, but also made a statement to the effect that currently he's not the president and therefore cannot be held responsible for the mess that we're experiencing now. And that he will be his own man if he should come into power and so on. Now, interestingly, this thing was released at a time when I had not been on the media for about 2 weeks. I was in China, you understand? So I had not been on the media for about 2 weeks. And the publication actually put a date to the statement I was supposed to have made when I was not on Pan-African television, when I was nowhere. So I quickly write a response and say, look, this thing is not true. I was not on Pan-African television at this date. I've not endorsed Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia and so on. And that these are my true positions on the elections. Some media houses use this. But then, interestingly, Good Evening Ghana, hosted by Paul Adumochi, read this statement. And then when they finished, Paul Adumochi added his own comments. Don't mind him, he said it. Can you believe this? 2 days ago, I called Paul. I said, Paul, why did you do that? Why on earth did you do that? Think about your own credibility. You understand? And these things happen all the time. And you see, there's a level of sophistication in all of this. First and foremost, I believe that whoever put out this information knew that I was out of town. Now, I was not just out of town, I was critically ill. Two combinations, out of town and critically ill. So, I believe that they were not expecting me to be able to respond to it. You understand? Now, this must take a level of sophistication. This is not done by people walking around the streets and so on. First of all, the people had the capacity to know my health condition. They had the capacity to know that I was out of the country, I was not going to be back for a very long time, and so on. They must have known. So they throw this in. Unfortunately, I was not as sick as they thought. I could still write. You understand? And unfortunately, the world state of development, especially of the media, has reached the state that it doesn't matter where you are. You drop anything into the media and it's all over the world. So I was able to respond. Now what shocked me was that after I had responded and said, it is not true, I have not done this, somebody who by all standards is considered a senior journalist and so on, comes and says, he said it. My goodness, where are we heading? I mean, very, very troubling. Now, there are other fake things, misinformation which is spreading around and so on. And it involves election surveys, polls. Is that how you call it, polls or pools? Or polls, I think. I have a friend who is actually a university professor. And I was told that he was conducting some polls. Now, I know this friend to be a member of the New Patriotic Party. I know him, he's a member of the New Patriotic Party. So when I heard it, I had a conversation with him. I said, my friend, these results we are going to announce, be very careful. You are a professor teaching in a university. If you do damage to your reputation, especially in a work such as this one, that damage will be long-lasting, and be careful. My brother, my shock. This professor went ahead, launched his research findings, and put Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia way ahead of all the other candidates. Professor! So that professor, how did he do his study? Because all the studies I have seen, even from the foreign ones, this one.
Fitch,
EIU, and so on. None of them made the kind of prediction that this professor made. So this professor, what did he get so right that every other researcher got wrong? But in any case, Master, no problem. In 6 or 7 days' time, if you count next Saturday, it is 7 days' time. If you discount next Saturday, it's 6 days' time. In 6 days' time, all of us will know who the Chale is. Master, you see these films. When we were young and we used to go and watch films and so on. You can only see the Chale at the last end of the film, not at the beginning. And on December 7th, we will see who the real Chale is. And we'll see those who will be burying their heads in shame. Master, what on earth would make you sit in your house, in your bedroom, and concoct figures to show that somebody is winning an election, knowing that this document will be lasting forever? This document will chase you throughout your life. What incentive can you get to destroy yourself to that level? So it is happening. This is also part of the disinformation campaign. It is not just false stories which are published and so on. False research. And false research not done by media houses and so on, but done sometimes by professors. Professors, people bearing the title of professor, are engaged in this misinformation campaign. And it is unbelievable. Unbelievable. You understand? Something we didn't get traction. I'm not surprised that it didn't get traction at all. But I'm sure you saw it. Everybody just simply dismissed it. There was some publication indicating that somebody in South Africa had alleged that for some contract or so, he had paid some bribes. If you read it, Massa, you can't tell the source of the story. You know, on the face of it, the story has no credibility. And yet, this story found front page coverage in 3 newspapers. Now, let me show you another thing. Sometimes you take a newspaper, and then you find a story with a certain headline. Then you find the same story with the same headline and the same wording from beginning to the end in another newspaper. What does that tell you? Straight away, you can tell that this story has been planted. Straight away. And it happens all the time. You take 4 newspapers. They are carrying the same story, same headline, word for word. And one of them attributes it to a special correspondent, by our special correspondent. And the other says, report from our political desk. And then the other one has a name. Obviously, these are bloody, bare-faced liars, tricksters, crooks. One story, same wording, same heading, same everything. Authored by the political desk of a certain newspaper A, authored by the own correspondent of a newspaper B, and C, authored by Adwa Mansa. Very lie. I mean, and it's so obvious you can see through it. Now, part of the question we are supposed to answer is how to deal with the spate of misinformation. I think one, immediately we should begin to apply the standards that we have all set. They are broadcasting standards. They are advertising standards and so on. These standards already exist. In fact, the Ghana Journalists Association has a book, a code of ethics. Let us apply this. And if we apply this, we'll be able to limit the spate of disinformation. Look, we are told that political adverts should not use underage persons. Check, from 1992 till now. They don't care. School children are being used in political adverts, political advertising. Nobody complains. Not the Ghana Education Service, not the so-called religious bodies and so on. Everybody is quiet. Children are being used in political advertising. All they do, these so-called faith-based institutions and so on, all they do is to find a means of coercing the political party leaders to go and sign a so-called peace agreement. A useless enterprise, completely useless enterprise. That's what they care about. They don't care about the misinformation. They don't care about the use of children in advertising. They don't care about those who are sitting on television promising to kill and so on. They don't care about that. All they care about is to put a piece of paper in front of the presidential candidates and say, sign. What does that do to us? What does that mean? Useless, foolish, absolutely useless. Why? Last elections, didn't we sign those documents, papers? Didn't 8 people die? What has happened after the 8 people died? So these documents which are being signed are useless. Well, they are not altogether useless. Let me rephrase. Because they are useful for those who are looking for funding for NGOs to organize peace campaigns. I mean, this peace thing has become a complete industry. The peace thing is a complete industry, my brother, complete industry. And if you're looking for funding to promote peace during, before, and after the elections and so on, Master, what better razzmatazz can you put together than getting all the presidential candidates sitting around the table, pulling their long pens and signing a piece of paper? It brings in the funds. Wow, wow. Master, this gimmick, please, the people of Ghana deserve to be treated with some respect. Because look, don't let us forget that the people of Ghana are very, very sophisticated and mature. It is the people of Ghana who defeated British colonialism. The people of Ghana. Look, the constitution that these elites are jumping over and so on, making pronouncements about and so on. This constitution came into being as a result of the struggle of the Ghanaian people, especially the ordinary people. You understand? And they should be treated with some respect. Let's show some respect. And let's stop this gimmicks, this antics and so on. Let's focus on the essential issues. And we'll come to discuss the essential issues later. We'll come to discuss issues about how elections may be rigged or not rigged. And I've heard people say that in Ghana you cannot rig elections. Where are they coming from? Cuckoo's land? Ghana? We'll come to it.
That's a comment that has been made by even the chairperson of the Electoral Commission. Well, let me move to Joyce Baumtari. In fact, on many occasions I've sent her flyers to confirm for me. And she will return the flyers with fake across it. Good morning.
Good morning.
Nice to see you after many months.
I know, good morning. You know, we've been on the road all these weeks and months, and making time to come here hasn't been easy. Even this morning, you are very lucky. I tried very hard to find a replacement. Somehow, everybody's very busy. And of course, Beatrice and I normally travel on the tours with the boss. So good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for having me. I mean, on my way here, I was listening to your the panel of experts who are discussing the subject. You know, we are actually going to the Ashanti region this morning. Okay. We are literally taking the fight to the elephant's own backyard. And so the team is leaving very early. And I think the very first stop will be in Efiduasi. And then we'll be going to Kwabre East, Kwabre South, Mafiwi or so, and all these places, and ending it straight in Kumasi. We'll be there for 5 good days. And so in the 16 regions, we are actually starting our campaign tour of region number 16. And I'm sure you've observed the course of the last few weeks. We've had many campaign teams led by the running mate, Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman, our national chairman, the Honorable Asiedun Ketia, our General Secretary, Honorable Fifi Kwete, our members of parliament. Many of them have been crisscrossing in and around Ashanti region. You know, I believe there's one of the largest voter registers we have in Ghana. It has a very large number of constituencies, 47 in all, probably the largest you have next to Greater Accra region. I am sure and certain that this time around, the propaganda, the false news, the fake news, the misinformation, disinformation, name it, none of the propaganda is going to work for the MPP in the Ashanti region. I am almost certain that the Ashanti region will do something that they probably haven't done in a very long time to show a certain, shift towards something different. And I'm hopeful that as we've campaigned the country and probably taken our message now to the Ashanti region by, of course, the flag bearer himself, John Dramani Mahama, I believe strongly that in the next few days there will be great news coming towards the NDC and, of course, the larger campaign from the Greater Ashanti region. You know, Sena, I've listened to Mr. Pratt, I've listened to the other gentleman talk about disinformation, about misinformation. You know, right from 2015, Ghana has grappled with this new canker. You know, in international law, they call it, a new canker in the media. But you see, no matter how well we define it, no matter how easy it is for you to identify and detect the reasons why people use this particular medium, and remember that it actually only looks for salacious stories. Normally, the fake news and the propaganda and all these things don't dwell on positive stories. It is either a sensational headline, it is a very sensitive subject matter, and in Ghana in particular, is either partisan, to do with your health, to do with religion, to do with faith, to do with very serious subject matters. And then you find that you literally buckle over yourself, because what exactly do you do? How do you deal with it? Do you go to the law courts? Do you use the legislations that we have? Or what exactly is it that an individual is supposed to do? I work for John Mahama. And I know for a fact that we have lodged formally a complaint to the CID, that's the Criminal Investigations Department, where we now have a department that deals with matters to do with cybersecurity and issues of this kind. And I know how slow the department is when it comes to what? Arresting and, of course, prosecuting these matters. In any case, look at the trajectory of our history over the years, especially since the New Patriotic Party has been in office. I will largely say that, look, we are not saints either. And certainly there are times when even we have fallen short of our own ethics. But on the wider generality of this subject matter, we certainly have no right or opportunities even to create syndicated stories or headlines, for example. That's not possible. And you would notice that mostly when you see these stories, they are coming from a certain quarters, be they on X, be they on Facebook, be they on Instagram, you name it. And it's not just because you are in Greater Accra. It is across the country. Very sensitive headlines, sensitive material. Scholars will argue that any stringent attempts to fight fake news is also a way that you're actually putting a fetter on freedom of speech. So the question you ask is that, when do you start to protect people from this sort of fake news? When does the buck stop because this has gone too far? And when does it actually appear as though you are actually undermining the cause of freedom of speech? But you see, in all of this, we must draw the line. When governments are responsible, there is also a way that they themselves may not necessarily become a value chain for sharing or spreading fake news or this sort of vile propaganda that we experience. I have observed that each time government even has its back to the wall, then there's more of this fake news. You see all the crazy headlines, and you know straight away that this is not possible. And everybody has suffered it, no matter how big, how small. Indeed, the minute you actually even touch, a very sensitive subject matter, you will see the next day you'll be the subject matter of it. I mean, we've had it with various very, high-level chiefs. It's very international in outlook sometimes, because it might touch on an international raw nerve or something bordering on security. It may touch on the persona of some very high-level person. All sorts of very negative publications. The question is that, how do you fight something that is also legitimized by the same people who ought to be putting a fetter on it? it becomes almost impossible. And I've observed how each time you report these accounts, you report these individuals, it goes to naught, because largely it is not as if the security agencies don't want to work. You remember the very famous case of Sami Jemfi in particular on a matter of this kind. Look at the swift action that was taken. Look at how quickly the prosecution started. But when it is on the other foot, you don't see similar reactions or responses. Indeed, at the time when I lodged this formal complaint at the police headquarters, I was told that they themselves are now mocked in the subject of fake news, to the extent that they no longer stamp complaints as received, because the police stamp itself has become a subject of enormous abuse. So where does it start and where does it end? So very soon, you will find that it would trigger down every other aspect of our society. To be very honest with you, there are also algorithms, and I heard the gentleman speak to what they do with AI, for example, that will actually share fake news to some specific accounts. This is another thing that we are grappling with. So you'll find that there's fake news about Mr. Pratt, for example. A certain group of persons will receive it immediately, in real time. Chances are he probably would not see it on any of his timelines, because this is also something that is well orchestrated to do maximum damage, to cause people to believe it long before you are even able to react. But you know, like all news, bad news travels so fast that irrespective of where you are geographically, you will find that it will move so quickly that any attempt for you to even douse these fires will take you even longer. And to be honest, sometimes it makes no difference at all. And don't forget that even if you want to start a prosecution, they will ask you for all sorts of information. By the time you get around to supplying all that evidence, you find that you are in trouble. There's one thing that I think the courts have done well with so far, which is to do with posting of nude material about people, especially in the public domain and all of that. With those ones, yes, they've probably acted very swiftly. But when it comes to subjects to do with disinformation, which is just literally just information we just put out for the sake of it. And then we have misinformation, which is intentional. You know this to be false. You know this has no evidence backing it. You have no way even of proving this information, but you put it out there largely because you feel that it will cause some damage. You know, look at the level of conversations we are having. And you see, it is everywhere. It's in the church. It's in the mosque. Within our political spaces, it's everywhere. In fact, the worst form I have seen is where people misspeak or say the wrong things, and then what do? They stamp them as fake. That, for me, has become one of the charades that I find as it's almost like the main ingredient in this grand agenda to make other political parties or political opponents or persons who criticize government or persons who say things that do not please us, or just to discredit the images of various people. The question is that when they attempt to discredit you in this manner, what is the solution that you have? You know, talk about the Ghana Broadcasting Act of 2004. Yes, they have standards. Yes, they have regulations. Yes, they make it a point to actually even discipline us sometimes. But how far does it go? I have watched, as Mr. Pratt said, young children, underage children, and being used for all sorts of adverts. Not just advertisements on TV and radio, on billboards. Students have been turned into all sorts of voices to discredit leaders. And I remember in 2016, when schools and children as young as 10, 12 were made to chant all sorts of invectives towards a former leader of another political party, and how they use these videos even for the sakes of propaganda, just to create a certain impression that we are literally trying to damage your image to a point where people believe that even kids agree that this is what you are. You know, there is a way that we can tell straight away that these stories that we see are certainly not true. They cannot be true. But you see, we are also in a space where you can share information. Dissemination is in real time. Within seconds, you have like 200 platforms on WhatsApp, for crying out loud. So just imagine that there's an article that is defamatory, an article that is very sensational, an article that is very salacious, an article that is calculated to create maximum discomfort. Within seconds, over 1 million people have seen it. Because there's all sorts of other avenues, various portals where these things are shared. How do you fight something like that? So yes, you go and pick up the Electronic Communications Act. Same thing, evidence. Who started what? Which page was the first to post it? Which newspaper article published it first? And who saw it first? And who didn't see it first? Tell me, by the time you file this complaint legally, by the time you've attempted even to go before this court and finding witnesses who are even willing, that is, to testify, you've actually lost time. The information has done whatever damage it is willing to do. Look, I remember years ago there was this really bad one involving a very venerable, king, for example, in Ghana. We were far out of the country. It spread like wildfire to the extent that the people closest to this very important individual started to reach out to Mr. Mahama and were sharing this thing like in utmost fear, because you see, it is also to create what? Opprobrium and a panic, and to scare people, and to create a certain impression that people probably think, how incongruous is that? But these are not innocuous things. In a society where all of us are so reactive, where we can be so sensitive, where we even know that irrespective of what the police tells us, causing arrests of this kind is almost impossible. Because by the time you go to Facebook and think, okay, this was the first person to post it, you find that there's 10 others. You cross-check on the time and it's there. And you see how they clone their accounts even. It's such a good job because now we have softwares for all of these things. How do you tackle matters of this kind at the root point of it? I think largely once this is also deliberately or intentionally sanctioned by government, then you know that you cannot fight it. Because now we have strategists who work for political parties, right? Who actually use misinformation as a tool for a political campaign to make appear as if things that definitely do not exist, to make a candidate probably look even more attractive than they really are, to create impressions that do not exist. You have a video that can actually make you look probably thinner, slimmer, even more handsome, more attractive. It's on a reel, it's on here. Within seconds, the bad news travels very, very quickly. The question I ask, and I ask all the time, is that we live in a society that is heavily regulated. Have you seen the recent attempts at recalling Parliament, for example? They have a tall list of various agenda items, mostly legislations of any kind. Sometimes I even wonder, to what end? When enforcement is a challenge, when adherence to is a challenge, when even prosecuting these sorts of offenses is a challenge. Many people found for years that our Criminal Offences Act, for example, had some draconian measures fighting these sorts of things. And so, yes, many portions of it were eventually amended. And then in the aftermath, it actually dovetailed even into the real, promulgation of the Electronic, Communications Act. In the whole period of it, how have we fared in terms of fighting misinformation and disinformation? And because we are now using it as a tool for political mischief, it has even made it even more easier for people to resort to disinformation of any kind, to resort, for example, to misinformation, to resort to fake news, for example, create a panic that some candidates have been in accidents, and immediately you see all these fake videos all over the place, because we are employing teams of young people who literally do absolutely nothing. We are actually employing artificial intelligence. And I say, why is it that every other jurisdiction may be grappling with this, but they also use the other side of it, which is what the gentleman was speaking to, the productive aspects of it, the positive aspects of it, where you use it for research, when you use it to identify persons engaged in illegal activities, when you use it to identify data, to use it for research that allows you to know where the poor or Ghana's most poor live, where you use it to detect where there's bad traffic so people can avoid those roads, where you use it, for example, to determine just how many people in our society have gotten multidimensionally poorer, or which environments lack toilet facilities. There is a very positive side to what we can use artificial intelligence for. All these things have very productive uses. And I think that if anybody needs it, we probably need it even more than the places that are being utilized for. But you see, the challenge is that we now have state apparatus sanctioning this activity, giving it all its blessing, enjoying the panic that it creates, enjoying the opprobrium, enjoying the fact that this can even manipulate people's views about campaigns, for example. So they pick up your manifesto items, they will find a way to tweak it, they pick up your voices, they connect it to other people's voices and create a video. They are able to do all sorts of machinations just calculated to mislead, to disparage, to misguide, to create the wrong impression. But the question I ask is that, why is there so much impunity even in our society? And it's everywhere. At the level of the Electoral Commissioner, at the level of the police service, the security agencies, it is everywhere. The beauty about this is that we have various institutions that are actually tasked with the responsibility of dealing with these things. But of course, they will ask you for evidence. It takes a very long time to actually determine. It takes a lot of money to build the evidence. And remember that these are mostly things that have to do with what? A lot of technological advances that mostly we don't even have. We still have challenges even with actually using what? Fingerprinting. So how are you then going to be able to determine that this thing that was cloned for this particular machine, from this office, from this location? But yes, we have instruments that we can use to determine all these things. The question is that, where is the wherewithal? Where is the willingness? Where is the interest in it? So beyond the conversations about whether or not this is good or bad for us, we know what is bad about it. But how have we come together to fight it? We are not, because largely it has become a strong tool to attack political opponents in a society that is largely so partisan, where all we sit and eat and drink and talk about, everything is about politics in Ghana. To be very honest with you, even schools that your kids go to, you reduce them to partisan conversations, who your friends are, which newspapers you read, which publications you like or not like, which headlines scream positive things about one person or not. That is what it is. There is a lot of it in the system. As we go into the next few days, and I keep telling people, expect more of it. Expect a lot of it to create the wrong impression, to mislead people, to serve us all sorts of reasons why, various distractions. The worst part is that we have a party in government that knows very well that they have completely failed to deliver on what it is that they promised the good people of Ghana. And these items of fake news have actually literally served them more than us, because the NDC is not in office. It is not in our interest. It does not even lie in our mouths, really, to want to put out salacious news that seeks to disparage our political leaders. Certainly not. And of course, we have so many campaign teams going on. So if they want to pick from each and every segment and create this impression and videos and also talk, and look, by the time you get the genuine video out of there, the bad one has gone viral. In fact, there's something we call going to trend something. So they can decide on a good day that this is the weapon we are going to use to attack citizen A or B. And it will trend literally for the whole day. And you will have media platforms, responsible ones, some intentionally, some not so intentionally, some even are also misled by all of us, because you are not even sure what to believe anymore. So normally what I do is to ask people, how do you think that is possible that this statement may be coming from Mr. Mahama? We've been communicating, at least even for us very young ones, for quite some time. There's a way that you know somebody's pattern of thought, things that they say. You just know that this is something that will not come from any responsible individual, or this named person would certainly never say, why are they mad? But you find that there are some people too, who, because of their own personal, misconceptions and misgivings about information or certain individuals, want to believe this as well. The challenge is that we have many beautiful legislations that cost a lot of money to implement and to pass. When you look at the stakeholder engagements that go into passing these legislations, my brother, they go to hotels, they go out of Accra, they select various committees, they spend a lot of resources to pass these legislations. As soon as it becomes an act, receives presidential accent, what happens? Implementation, monitoring, supervision. It's a big challenge. So I personally these days don't even bother about making these formal reports anymore. To be honest, I've given up. Because to what end? So you lodge a complaint. You get a whole document together. You attach the tapes, you attach the videos, name it. Recently we've had Mr. Mahama's lawyers, for example, issue a very, very lengthy disclaimer to the story that just came out recently about this matter to do with mines being given to a Russian company. As Mr. ABF Sena will say, you don't have a head, how do you chew corn? So as we sit today, our whole effort is to prosecute our campaign in a manner that we hope will achieve maximum results. We are poised to win this election. And I have no doubt, you know, I tell people all the time, we are saving all these receipts, okay? We are literally saving them. We will get a number of very young, sharp people together to investigate the sources of all of these things. And make no mistake, we will definitely bring the axe down on these matters, because some of these issues can lead to conflicts. They can lead to war. They can create and disturb the peace in the manner that you and I do not expect. And you see, we talk about it all the time. Beyond the witness tampering and evidence tampering and the very partisan way that our Attorney General has actually, you know, literally carved himself or choreographed himself or curated himself, there are also other matters beyond the partisan campaigns by an Attorney General. There are other issues that disturb the peace, that have reason to, that can even destabilize the peace, that can create challenges for the society. And certainly if there are laws to deal with it, you will be expecting that the government's Attorney General will be interested in some of these matters as well. Okay. But beyond the partisan or political, prosecutions and persecutions, you find that they're not so interested in some of these things. Recently, a very private company led a whole conversation about misinformation and disinformation. They had the Chief Justice herself, they had His Excellency the President, they had the Inspector General of Police, they had almost all the security services bosses represented. And everybody threw their arms in the air in utter askance. Indeed, at the same forum, we had government's information minister literally explaining away and defending the indefensible. And that's what we have. So you ask yourself, when you see fake news, when you see disinformation or misinformation, who are the beneficiaries? And when you look on the scale of 1 to 10, at least 8 out of 10 of the stories you see benefit just the New Patriotic Party largely. Look at their radio stations. We come here all the time. How often do we come here to discuss misleading headlines, for example? We don't. But go to other stations, go to the Ashanti region, where their own party chairman owns a TV and radio station. Check what they do with it. And there are no sanctions whatsoever. They are literally a law unto themselves. They can sit there and spew all manner of rubbish against any individual, and nobody does anything to them. Indeed, the gentleman that they actually, in quote, pretended to arrest had reason to come out on bail and to come and post that he was going to look for fufu and what to eat. He made no bones about it. He showed no remorse for it. He didn't even act as if what he had done bothered him. But you see, the sad thing is that are we so, stuck into ourselves that we can't even see that sometimes it also pays to do the right thing? That these are things that even the media can take up responsibly to deal with. Imagine a media house taking on somebody for serving them with news that is misleading, with publications that are false, with stories that do not actually bear out the facts that are supposedly given. This would be an exercise that actually helps our society as well. Okay. So I think that we can all have these conversations and debates, and like I said, we are not in the church, we are a political party. And I found there are times when they do these very wicked things, and colleagues of ours say, look, do it to them too. You understand? So boot for boot, idiocy for idiocy. But then to what end? They have an upper hand. They have more resources. They have more visibility. For Christ's sake, they have power in their hands. How do you fight against all of that? But do we then sit and say that just because of that, we have all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God? The answer is no. I have no doubt in my mind that once these elections are over and John Mahama is duly elected, these are matters that will be taken very, very seriously. Media houses, media personalities, key personalities will no longer be able to run roughshod over us by disseminating news that they know to be false. Even in some cases, there is no intention. It is just to create mischief and to mislead the general public. But of course, in a country that everybody listens to radio, If you sit on the radio station, for example, now we have a multiplicity of them that speak in various languages. Some people don't even understand one language or the other. So if they want to spew fake news all day to convince or achieve a certain political gain, how do you fight against that? You understand? So we find ourselves in a very difficult situation. Very, very difficult situation. But I believe that the only thing that will end this impunity, that will end this disrespect, that will end this very, very dishonesty that we have, where a government is totally discredited, but because they want to stay on and to deny themselves an opportunity of being accountable to the good people of Ghana, there is only one way to do it, that we will calculatedly distribute and disseminate false and fake news. Somebody says I'll improve, they come back with a new word. Somebody says I'll review, they come back with something else. Somebody says I'll revisit, they come back with something else. But then again, you notice it never happens to them. The question is why? That you wake up in the morning and you see screaming headlines. It's almost as if the newspapers, some of them go to bed together, and they wake up in the morning and the headlines are literally the same. You can just tell that these are all calculated just to create fear and panic. I think that as we go along, society also should be more discerning. Always cross-check. Always make sure before you click the button to send. But they'll tell you, oh no, we are sharing it because we want clarification. Oh, did you say this? In a day you can get 200 of them. How do you fight against something like that? Especially when it's state-sponsored.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
I hope that Joyce doesn't mind. I listened to you very carefully, and you made reference to a Ghanaian king. I was taken aback. There's no king in Ghana. There cannot be a king in Ghana. This is a constitutional, democratic, secular republic. There is no king in Ghana. There can never be a king in Ghana. So it's a small point that I wanted to make.
Thank you.
And I feel very passionately about this.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Joyce, for bringing in the angle of sometimes when people are caught saying some scandalous things, and they'll tell you it's fake. There's an interesting one up on audio of a leak audio of a meeting that involves a parliamentary candidate making the rounds. When it was played, he heard it. He said it's AI generated. He spoke through or talk about his entire family and everything. But he says it was AI generated. So that's another interest now because of the spread of fake news. Anybody can just claim that this is fake, even though he said it.
The stories from Equatorial Guinea attracted similar comments.
Nilate says, in fact, Nilate says, in fact, Untumi Station would have been shut down in any civilized and serious country, considering the kind of information they put out. Maggie Adai says, I'm sorry, but they don't have power in their hands. Power belongs to the people and not any political party. Kukubo Steven says, watching live from River, misinformation in social media is too much. We have to limit it by arresting people who are publishing it. Cyrus Vivarus is wondering, is interested in Paul Adumochi's response when Mr. Pat called him on. Actually, I realize that you have avoided making any public. This is the first time I'm making a public comment about the things he said. Yeah, the first yes. So this is the first time he's actually talking about it. Lydia Kam says, great submission by Joyce Bawa Mukhtari. There's Halidu Anjari says, great man with wisdom, JDM. There's Seta Bochi says, please, I want to know whether Media Commission is still alive and kicking. Yes, it is. There's Nene Tete. Farfo says, Ango Kwesi will never disappoint. Emmanuel Payson says, no single floating voter will choose MPP over NDC. Or will even make a floating voter to choose DMB over JM? Is it the DDEP? Being taxed, Momo tax, COVID tax, or millions under the best of government appointees? That's coming from Emmanuel. Emmanuel, thank you very much for that message. As Peter Dojo says, please tell Uncle Kwesi that I was very impressed when I watched his recent declaration in Niger. I want to meet him in person. He's a great Pan-African. He's a great Pan-Africanist. Yes, Kelly Sherry says, agreed. The Peace Council becomes absolutely Okay, I salute Mr. Pratt, and thank you very much for those comments. Francis Gordon says most Ghanaians can now read between the lines when misinformation is being propagated. Those who champion this misinformation are doing so with malicious political intention to sway some of the public to vote in a certain way. Kofi Simon says, okay, and Kufuor is expecting reasonable Ghanaians to vote for such people who have no respect for any other tribesmen. Okay, Kufuor must come again. Thank you for those comments. Those are some of the comments you're sharing with us on our very first topic. Like I said, it's a pre-2024 election conversation, and we are looking at various aspects of the election going into the elections. We're moving on to the matter of the Electoral Commission's preparations. I'll start with you, Doc, once again.
Yeah. Sena, going into this election, a lot is at stake, and the people of Ghana really are yearning for a change, and not only a change in leadership, but a change in the processes that would elect our leaders, and a systemic change, right? The country is so highly polarized that today someone would even kill his father or his mother due to politics, right? And I think that if care is not taken, looking at the current data coming from the Afrobarometer report and that of CDD, some of the stakeholders in this year's general election might plunder this country into serious abyss. And we are of the view, and we, the members of the Movement for Change, led by Honorable Alan Kojo Tremantin, are of the view that the people of Ghana, taking inspiration from our historic precedents till date, right, deserve nothing else but an ultimate solution to their problems. And it's quite clear that 68% of Ghanaians have lost trust in this Electoral Commission going into this election. And I'll give you numerous reasons why this is so. Number one is to do with the flaws in our Constitution. And of course, the influence or the usage of partisan lens in conducting government business in the appointment of various heads of independent constitutional bodies like the Electoral Commission. And we've seen the composition of this EC. Bosman Asari, for example, is a known patron of TESCON, which is a tertiary institution body of the MPP, right, which is their youth wing. It's also another branch of their youth wing, which is on various campuses. And when you have such a person have such serious affiliation with a political party, and you take such person to an independent constitutional body, and that same person is going to conduct or manage an electoral process that involves the same party he was a member of, or he is a member, that's the question. Because they can argue and say maybe on paper he has resigned, but maybe in his heart and in his mind he is still with them, and God knows what they have been planning going into this election. But I mean, whatever it takes, the people of Ghana will resist any attempt to rig this election. Now we're talking about constitutional reform, which is one of the themes underpinning the Movement for Change. Under Article 70 of the 1992 Constitution, the President has a mandate to appoint the EC chairperson and other commissioners of the EC in consultation with the Council of State. We are proposing that Ghana transitions into a bicameral parliamentary system, bringing on board a new chamber. Because the country is so polarized, we need a buffer. We need a body that would be able to mitigate the effects of the polarization of our society. And if you look at data like that of the varieties of democracy, and you juxtapose our performance in terms of GDP and public administration, polarization or partiality of our public administration since independence till date, you realize that there is a nexus between the partiality of our public administration and the performance of our GDP. The likes of Malaysia, the likes of Singapore, the likes of South Korea, that have stronger institutions and do not allow partisan politics in their bureaucracy. They adhere to Max Weber's ideal principle of bureaucracy, right? That does not allow politicization of our public administration, right? It inures to the, I would say, optimum and absolute effects of good governance that we're not seeing today. And so with this second chamber that Honorable Alan Kojo-Tramante is proposing, we are going to abolish the Council of State. This second chamber would be made up of non-state actors, namely our traditional authorities, faith-based organizations, the media, right? Youth-led organizations, organizations that promote the interests of the persons with disabilities, academia, industry captains, and also the diaspora. And all these entities, independent or I would say apolitical entities, would come together to appoint heads of independent constitutional bodies, like that of the EC chairperson, the CDS, the IGP, the Chief Justice, and other justices of our Supreme Court. And this would mitigate the issue of politicization of our public administration that is leading to this great mistrust of the people of Ghana in our public polities, right? And we believe that if we are able to achieve this going forward, no EC chairperson's tenure will be conterminous with that of the ruling party that appoints him or her. And that's what we've seen since Afarijan. There's been a new era where, be it the NDC or the MPP, whoever is in power, when there's a change of power, and everyone comes with his IGP, his CDS, his CJ, and then their EC chairperson and commissioners of the EC. We want to ensure that we bring in these policy recommendations to stabilize our democracy, because the desire for democracy is losing in the eyes of Ghanaians. Ghanaians are beginning to lose hope in democracy. And this is as a result of the consistent failure of our leadership and our governance system that has failed to promote adequate social and economic development of our people. And the issue of elections and rigging of elections in this country, there's a new scandal out there. I'll say it's a scandal because we are also really much monitoring, we're really much worried about the happenings in, I think, in Nkoko, yes, where the sales of a certain bag that has ballot papers designated for a particular constituency have been tampered with. And according to them, they claim the contents are still intact. But only God knows the truth. Because, Sena, let's be honest here. The police have been complicit in dealing with electoral issues. I mean, I say that without any doubt and without any fear. That is a fact. The police, the military, sometimes are being used by whichever government is in power or parties in power to try and manipulate our electoral processes and rig the election in favor of someone. We've seen an instance, and I was told, I mean, growing up as a young person who has great interest in politics. I've heard stories where thugs would come to the polling station, snatch ballot boxes, and then the police, in acting to chase and apprehend them and retrieve the stolen ballot boxes, then connive with them to swipe ballot boxes, right, with the same details, serial numbers and all that, right, of the polling stations and the same credentials of that polling station that erroneous crime happened. And they take it back and they stuff in printed ballot papers that would yield a positive result for their desired candidates. And we've seen that time and time again. And, you know, I'm not surprised, Sena, because like I said, our public administration has been influenced by partisan politics, especially in our appraisal system. If you do not belong to a certain political party, namely the NDC or the MPP, right, you will not be promoted to a certain level in our public administration. And that's a fact. It is highly apodictic. What I'm saying is highly apodictic. Nobody can question what I'm saying. And that is why there's some form of allegiance to political parties than the ultimate allegiance to Ghana and the interests of Ghana. And we need to really have a plan going forward. And this is all about leadership. If we have the right kind of leadership, all these issues will be mitigated. And so the EC, going into this election, we do not trust the EC. EC where in 2020, published different results of the general election, contradicting itself. The EC were missing BVR and BVD machines were reported by the media, and they denied it, but later came to the conclusion and the agreement that yes, indeed, these BVR and BVD machines were stolen from their warehouse. And so, Sena, we are much more concerned about the preparation of the EC. We think that going forward as a country, we need to bring a lot of reforms, as I did espouse here. We have to also adapt technological solutions on how we can be able to mitigate multiple voting, right? With the BVR and BVD machines where you can verify, you can verify, but it's alleged and it's true that some EC officials are party officials. Some EC officials that are going to conduct this election are known members of the MPP, right? And it's alleged in previous elections that you can give multiple ballot papers to one person to go and tamper it and then put it in the ballot box. I believe that going forward as a country, and which we under the Movement for Change would adapt in the future, we would use technological solutions in our electoral process. So for example, if you're going to vote and you have multiple ballot papers, it will not go into the box because maybe it will be a smart box. We would have a smart box system that would be able to mitigate this issue. And also with the logistical aspect of the EC, how are we able to track? Because I think that the sales are not enough. As for sales, Sena, I can go and buy sales of the same color. I can, if I know the MPP or the NDC, be it I want to have an agenda to rig or to steal the contents inside. If I know that this my opponent is using maybe a yellow seal, I can equally go and, these are items that are procured in the open market. You can equally go and do that, change it, and then, do whatever you want to do. So we want to advance the security of the distribution of electoral materials and, adapt technological instruments like GPS tracking systems that, I would say motion sensitive, where if you tamper with it, it would ring out an alarm that would alert the EC officials of such tampering. And I think that going forward, the people of Ghana are yearning for a change. We have the will, as members of the Movement for Change, led by Alan Tremantin, who I say without any doubt is the reincarnation of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. Looking at his vision, because Nkrumah was a visionary person. Alan is also a visionary person. Alan is an industrialist, he has done it before, and he can do greater. And of course, he is a transitioning leader. And that is why in the history of our fourth republic, Sena, the running mate of Honorable Alan Kojo Tremantin is just 40 years old. 40 years old in the person of Kwame Owusu-Danso, who is a social activist, a lawyer, and a very young, determined man who wants to see Ghana change. And I think that this is the best combination, taking into consideration the demography of the voters in this coming election, that the youth are going to decide who will lead Ghana. And in going to decide who will lead Ghana, we are going to select somebody who has the youth at heart, somebody who has the character, the competence, and the credibility, and the track record in establishing an enterprise economy. And that is why, if you read the history of his work, in 1994, when Nelson Mandela left prison, and he needed 7 experts to help build an enterprise economy in South Africa to alleviate the suffering of the destituted indigenous people of South Africa under the apartheid regime, Alan Kojo Tremantin was one of those experts. Today we celebrate a continental free trade area in the name of Africa Continental Free Trade Area, which he was a key architect in formulating that. And so I'm wrapping up with this. So, Sena, we know that we have what it takes to reform the EC. This issue that I've given and this resolve that I've given from the Movement for Change is the best way going forward. If we want to enjoy the peace that we've been enjoying since, and if you look at the Global Peace Index, Ghana has declined from the 40th position in 2022 to now the 55th position in 2024.
That will come to the matter of security.
And so,
shortly.
and so these issues definitely influence the security that we enjoy as a country. Yeah. And we hope that the Ghanaian people will place their trust in Alan Tremantin, who will do it. And he's not going to be a leader who will give excuses. He will do it. He has a erudition, he has a competence, and he has a love of the people. And we would promote absolute governance, and we will ensure that EC is reformed, so that tomorrow no partisan or political person would uphold this high office of the Electoral Commission.
Thank you, Doc. A few comments before I go to Madam Joyce Bamutari. Livingston says it was in Poland. I think the matter of the twins was in Poland. Then Roland Adiko says most of the misinformation is coming from the Jubilee House. Marilyn Tego says he lost his credibility when he decided to defend what was not defensible. I'm not so clear what Marilyn is talking about. There's Idrisu Kasim, who is then talking about the post, the professor in question. The confidence level of his research was the 1 million ways to win the elections. Things around us as we complain in our homes, the use of children in political adverts. There's always, this is Sani Harun, says, oh my God, this woman is so amazing. What a class, intelligent, high standard thinking. I think she can be future president of Ghana 2032. So Joyce, prepare. Well, I think it was one of the, Kobla Agwenyega, I think when you were complaining about the use of the fake news, mostly by the NPP, Kobla Agwenyega's response was only, you to you saw, man. That's the only thing he said on issue. Anyway, in fact, before I come to you, Joyce, there's this comment coming from Kojo Chumwafo. He says, Sena, good morning. Let's just cut straight to the chase. We are in injury time, and the referee is biased. The removal of Charlotte Osei with trumped-up charges and the subsequent appointment of MPP oppressionists from Jin Mensa, Niblo Kualote through Bosman Asari and Apiahini among others, was designed by Akufo-Addo to rig elections. Simple. The AC has been engaged in preparative ex-ante rigging for the past 6 years. There are also well-laid plans for ex-post rigging. The several layers of collation from constituency through regional to national is testament to their wish to change results by any means necessary. What they haven't bargained for is the reaction of Ghanaians to any attempt to change the outcome of the elections and usurp the will of the Ghanaian people. Clearly, they are not good students of history, so they should try it. Ms. Mutari?
You know, on matters of the Electoral Commission, all of us are added them. You know, there can be no gainsaying. You know, you can't even say it in so many words. There's just no description for how low this particular Electoral Commission has sunk. I mean, think about it. You look at the public perceptions of our public institutions since Akufo-Addo has been in office. We have completely lost all the gains we've made. We now have various constitutional bodies, right, that are literally there to sing the anthem of who is in power, right? To dance to the tunes that are being belted out. Literally to satisfy every whim and caprice, including idiosyncrasies of President Akufo-Addo, nothing else. If the public can tell you and I, for example, that this individual is a partisan individual, a communicator for the New Patriotic Party, and yet such an individual is allowed to take up an appointment as a commissioner of Ghana's Electoral Commission, and nobody can say anything, despite the public outcry and the public interest, people petitioned the President of the Republic of Ghana, and all of these requests met literally absolute silence. This is a man who does exactly what pleases him. A man who now believes even that Ghana is largely an heirloom and he can do and speak and dictate whatever the pace is that he actually thinks is right. What I have come to realize is that, honestly, maybe we can take all of the Fourth Republic into consideration. That since this Electoral Commission was born by the 1992 Constitution, I have never seen, ever, such deliberate incompetence, such intentional and deliberate attempts calculated to disrupt the election, to create a certain wrong impression. Above all, listen carefully. At every step of this conversation, what do you see the EC do? Next day, there's a press conference. Next day, there's a press statement. 2 days later, there's an explanation. 4 days, you know, subtle admissions, but deliberately pretending that they are carrying on this grand charade of exhibiting a competence that doesn't exist. So you ask yourself, whom really are they undermining? The EC is now undermining itself in furtherance of somebody's interest. The truth is that Akufo-Addo wants a third term through Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia. Fact. What is the real reason why he cares what goes into the Electoral Commission? The reason is simple. They want to avoid accountability. Don't forget that this is a party that rose into power largely through false information and propaganda. They damaged the NDC to the point where even members within our own political party were not even sure that they were actually in the same political party, because they believed a lot of the rubbish and garbage that was spewed. Look at the way and manner in which Charlotte Osei was attacked. Look at the sort of criticism that she received. They literally hijacked the whole process of that election until they were declared winners. Till date, I am yet to see a more unsuited, literally not fit for purpose, a completely, I don't even know whether they are going or coming. I believe they themselves don't know what they are up to. In terms of registration, in terms of voter exhibition, in terms of even basic deployment of, ballot papers, in terms of literally ink for thumb printing, in terms of voter education, indeed. When you see the adverts even that they put out, even in the adverts you see their incompetence. No imagination. Nothing for the first time. And please go and make comparisons between existing advertisements in terms of civic education put out by the EC over the years. And you ask yourself, what's going on? I have personally engaged with a lot of these EC commissioners. At least we all know most of them. My brother, they are not there to serve any citizen's interests. None whatsoever. I think because we have all exposed them as being partisan even, they are now even more prepared to go against the will of the people. You know, maybe sometimes I ask myself, maybe we should have ignored them or pretended we didn't know. But for the first time, the National Democratic Congress has risen up to the occasion. We have taken all the recommendations for reforms to the EC seriously. We returned to IPAC on advice because, of course, once we were sitting on the fence, it wasn't easy to tackle them from within. Now we have literally taken a seat at the table of IPAC. It may not necessarily have any judicial or legal basis, but it's actually a pressure point or a point where all other beneficiaries, I will call them the biggest constituency representatives of the Electoral Commission. So they meet there to discuss matters that affect elections or processes of elections in Ghana. And what have we experienced? Day in, day out, a whole gamut or raft of mistakes demonstrating their incompetence beyond anybody's reasonable measure or logic. Sena, this election is literally up for grabs. I know that for months now, the new Patriotic Party has known months ahead and has information, data, research, suggesting that they face an exit. They know. In both the parliamentary and the presidential. Indeed, the rate of attrition was so bad even in 2020 that we literally have a hung parliament. It has never happened before. What we ought to take into cognizance is the fact that the NDC went into opposition with the largest loss in a very long time. And by 2020, they were marching them boot for boot. That alone should tell us something. Make no mistake, the Electoral Commission and its commissioners themselves know that they've literally been caught pants down, that all the gimmicks will no longer hold sway, because for the first time, we have risen up to our responsibilities. First and foremost, to the citizens of Ghana, that their ballots ought to be protected. But I've also still heard rumors that chances are people will go to the polling stations and probably not find their names on the register, because in the course of the exhibition, they took so many weeks to reconcile the lists of voters that by the time it was time for them to consider the exhibition, there was no longer enough time to do it. So they had to do a process of going online to check. They sent out a short code. Maybe some people checked, others may not have checked. Maybe there are even many people who had no means even of checking or didn't even get the communication allowing them to go there and check. You know, on all these issues, if the NDC had any comfort, for example, in seeking judicial redress, maybe for weeks now, we would be in court day in, day out. And I am privy to the debates about whether we should take action, whether we should go to court, we should seek redress legally, whether we should take the time to sue the EC. The question you ask is that, to what end and in whose interest will that be? In any case, you find out that month after month, it appears that the EC has become a law unto themselves, dictating even in the blatant and flagrant exposition of their incompetence. They still try very hard to create a certain impression that doesn't exist. When you send them information, you find that they are admitting it in one breath. In another breath, they are denying it. But every step of the way, they are delivering on what it is you are asking. Look, I was preparing this morning, I read a very interesting quote many years ago. This is actually from Dr. Sajifo, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, when he was launching the CPP many years ago. This was as far back as 1949. And then he said, and I quote, "There come in all political struggles rare moments, hard to distinguish but fatal to let slip, when even caution is dangerous, when all must be set on a hazard, and out of the simple man its ordained strength, and unquote. The EC must know that there is something in the citizen, that when the Ghanaian citizen makes up their minds that this is the change that they want to have. And I listened to a very young student yesterday. She said the reason why we are in a democratic dispensation is that if we do not like something, we go there and vote for change. And so if we change and vote for this party and they also come and do not do the things that we want, we have every responsibility to go back out there and change them again. Take right from the days of the Abu Ramadan cases all the way to the Supreme Court, for example. At each step, the EC was given directions on what to do, how to do it, and what not to do. So it did not start from today. For some very interesting reason, even in Parliament, have you ever heard the EC take a budget to Parliament? That was rejected before. Have you ever heard the EC take a CI to Parliament? That was rejected before. No. Because they are deemed as impartial arbiters. The taxpayer deems that responsibility as a very serious one in federals of our democracy. So the idea has always been that we will err on the side of the caution by giving the Electoral Commission as much support as they require. So funds are not a challenge. Technology to advance the course of their work is not a challenge. Legislation backing their work or giving them vent for what it is they need to do is not a challenge. Now what we have is that the individuals spearheading all this trust that we repose in them are themselves biased in this exercise. And therein lies the real sadness that we call an electoral commission. This is the real problem, because there's this grand agenda to satisfy one political party against the other. But what they actually have not actually thought of is that that other side that they are trying so hard to try and subjugate has actually risen above and now takes very seriously its responsibility as being the mouthpiece of the entire citizenry. And so even though they are refusing to adhere to caution, as Osajifo said, sometimes the ordinary man is the one that will lead them to accept that caution. And so I have no doubt that when Ghanaians go out there on December 07, as they vote and vote out this very, 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 very useless administration, the message will be sent very clearly, not just to government, but also to the Electoral Commissioner, that everything that they do, that the citizens will literally be able on D-Day to checkmate their activities. You heard the protests from ordinary citizens, not political parties. You heard the protests even in the course of destroying, apparently, ballot papers that were over the numbers they required. You heard about the fact that in some cases even, they have printed insufficient ballot papers. In another situation, that serial numbers were wrongly attached to the ballot papers. In another place, that little locks that they put on them had been tampered with in the course of distribution. And then they come out and tell you that political parties need not expend resources to monitor transfer of ballot boxes and ballot papers. Says who? If the EC were a body that were operating independently of government manipulation and interference, all of us would know. If the EC were not filled with these very politically partisan individuals, all of us will know. In any case, were we not here in Accra, when an EC commissioner told everybody that the National Democratic Congress, purveyors of the 1992 Constitution, were a threat to our democracy in Ghana. But you know something? Wrong. The real threat to our democracy is responsible individuals who refuse to do what is right, who refuse and pretend to even to be incompetent because they seek to please one side against the other. The new patriotic party led by Akufo-Addo and Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, they know that they have woefully failed the good people of Ghana. That but for the rigging through ballot stuffing and stolen votes, for example, and the intimidatory tactics that they exhibit, because they know that they have literally, there's something that mostly cheats do. What they do is that they deconstruct everything that you and I hold dear or think is right or wrong. So, for example, they will tell you that, you know, if the NDC has 2 or 3 members of Mahama's family working in the NDC or members of the NDC, it is wrong because it is happening in the NDC. But if in the New Patriotic Party we have 50 people affiliated to Akufo-Addo and Bawumia and their families working in our party, it's okay because they are party members too. If the finance minister is my relative, it is my party, it's okay in the MPP. But if the finance minister in the NDC happens to be the relative of an elder or member of the NDC, then it is wrong. So they have ways that they manipulate and blackmail society to start to think a certain way, largely because as you deconstruct all the things we hold dear, you also get people to do what? To kowtow to you, to be afraid of you, to be scared to even criticize you. So you promise that you are going to make a pledge to the Almighty God, that you are going to donate from your heart a cathedral in honor of God for having made you president. But you go back and take taxpayers' money, about $58 million of money that we could utilize in many other places. Nobody goes to court and is able to stop you. In the end, you expend all these resources, and that is what we know. There is so much more that we don't know. And at the end of the day, what is it you are telling us? It's okay because it is my party, it's me in the MPP doing so it's fine. But shut your eyes for a minute that the NDC, in similar circumstances, had committed even $10 million, a fraction of $58 million. You will see the deconstruct telling you how wrong it is because it is being done by the National Democratic Congress. But when same and worse is being done by the MPP, it's okay. So money was found under the bed of Madame Cecilia Dapa, millions of dollars and cedis altogether, sanitation minister. She gets a lovely letter, dear this, dear that. But look at the way they deconstruct when it is on the National Democratic Congress's side. For how much? For a farthing. But they will convince the generality because of the aggression with which they say it. Similar thing has happened in Parliament. When we heard the former speaker, and at least I will say one thing for Professor Michael Quay, he tried very hard not to disgrace himself and tried very hard to navigate the murky waters of having set a precedent that when same was replicated by the current speaker, the same deconstruct was used strategically to convince society that what Speaker Bagbin is doing is wrong. But when it was done in similar circumstances by the then Professor Michael Quay, then Speaker of Ghana, as he then was, it was okay. You see, this is the society we live in. So there's a law for them, then there's one for us. The judiciary must do things in a certain way for them, and then there's something for us. The EC must act a certain way for them, then there's something for us. So yes, it's okay to come and cite Charlotte Osei for procurement breaches that probably had absolutely nothing to do whatsoever with her leadership of the EC or the Electoral Commission. And yes, we've won. But no, we should tell the people that it is still wrong to keep her because we don't deem her as our person. So let's let her go and bring someone that we consider as our person and attach many other partisan people, and to hell with all of you. Who cares what you think? I have won by a very large majority, and I'll do what pleases me. In any case, this is a man who told us that he was actually an adherent of the rule of law. How has the perception of our justice delivery and justice system fared under his watch? Same. And the NDC, they will deconstruct it and tell you it is wrong. If the NDC goes to court and they lose as many times as possible, that's okay. But the MPP should not lose a case. And what did they tell you? Because we went there with stronger facts, because we had better, persuasions to give to the court. But you forget that when the Attorney General is caught pants down, witness tampering, he's protected and preserved by everybody. Shut your eyes for a minute and imagine that that Attorney General were an NDC Attorney General. That even a text message to a state witness would have led to enormous public opprobrium. They would have faced criticism even from the court. And you watch what happened when Speaker Bagbin's lawyer went to court, for example, and asked that our colleague, Justice Enesgeu, be recused from the case. What did the Lady Chief Justice say? That once you've gone to Parliament, you've been vetted, it is deemed that what? You are no longer partisan. How does being vetted by Parliament clean a record of partisanship? So just imagine that I, Joyce, were to appear before the Parliament, for example, to be vetted for the role of a Supreme Court judge. Will there not be questions about the fact that I was serving the NDC? Or did I serve as spokesperson for John Mahama? Or did I make some very partisan speeches that will probably not be suitable for me to serve on the Supreme Court? These are matters that ought to be discussed. And you see, but they will deconstruct it because they want you to think that it's okay because it's the MPP. But it wasn't okay because the other person was an NDC person who served for less than even what? Just a few months in the days of the revolution. That is an issue, but not when it's the MPP. There's the same thing repeating itself. And you see, I have said something. I have maintained that Mr. Mahama has largely been vindicated. On the many things that he used to talk about, largely, it has come to pass. This is the same government that told you and I in the course of the financial crisis that, for example, that they were not going to give you haircuts. And they did. Pensioners wept. We had a whole former Chief Justice taken to the streets, for example, and who cared? They wouldn't even offer her a seat, let alone have a conversation with her, or even find ways to placate her or anybody else for that matter, because she's doing it to them. But imagine that the shoe was on the other foot, and this was a demonstration by even one person against the NDC. You'll be surprised at what you get. In fact, they'll be sending surrogates to court to challenge the NDC and challenge the process. So today, they are in office. 8 years later, Sena, look at it critically on the economy, what they said about the NDC against their performance, abysmal. What they said about the rule or governance of the NDC against their misrule, abysmal. What they did in terms of infrastructure, that we didn't eat roads. But today they are trying to convince you. Mahama left behind 126 different E-blocks at different stages of completion. You were told that it was a poor policy and that they were in bushes. Go to Bongo, for example, and cross-check that the Agenda 111 hospital project is 5 minutes away from the E-block in Bongo, for example. That is not a bush because it is because the MPP has put it there. You know, there is something about deconstructing your opponent. And it is something that the New Patriotic Party has done very, very well. So they have their back to the wall now. They know that they have almost lost. They approach Oman Kufuor, a man who, since he's been out of office, has come almost to be like someone that everybody now sees with a certain graciousness. But they will go and tell him, it is your party. If you don't stand up for us, it means that you are not with us. They will deconstruct him and cause him to do something that ordinarily, on his own, suo motu, he will probably never do. But because they will demand it of him, that if you don't do that, it means then that you have taken sides. So you see, I keep telling people that don't expect the NDC to go to the New Patriotic Party to take moral lessons. When we nominated Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman as running mate, you heard even females within the New Patriotic Party, what were they saying? Ask yourself that if the same woman had been nominated by Akufo-Addo for the same role, how would those same people value that contribution? But you see, they have succeeded in deconstructing that. They reduce the conversation not to the, the sustainability of the issue or even to the relevance of the issue or the competence of the issue. No, they deconstruct it. That person is not fit for that office. That person, or with all their accomplishments notwithstanding, their age does not allow them to. But when they pick up a chief of staff of the same category of age, what do they tell you? They empower her and make her appear almost as if she's actually deputy to the president. And you have to accept it because once more, they deconstruct it in our minds. Let me speak to the generality of the populace. That the New Patriotic Party, if you consider the promises they made and the reasons why they won power overwhelmingly in 2016, right from the plagiarized speech that was delivered by President Akufo-Addo at his inauguration till date, what has changed? When he brought in Dr. Bawumia as his running mate, what did he tell us? They did the same deconstruction and told you and I that he was an economist of high repute and that he will come into office and he will deliver on an economy like the NDC had never seen before, to the satisfaction of the entire citizenry. What has happened? They announced an economic management team led by Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, and you heard all the invectives, the low conversations, including his spouse, telling everybody and insulting directly John Dramani Mahama A man whose level of acceptability we all know was always higher than theirs. But they deconstructed in a way that even we started to think that maybe they were right. So Ghanaians followed them in droves. Where are all the people who follow them today? At least a few of them have come out openly to exhibit their regret. How about the others? One of the main CSOs that endorsed Akufo-Addo and Bawumia the most has been the biggest critic of the Electoral Commission. You saw how they handled the matter of SAL, for example. And yet, we were told that it was okay because the EC says so. Because the EC says so under Akufo-Addo and Bawumia, so it's okay. They managed even to get one parliamentary representative because they denied the whole of SAL an opportunity to vote. But because we have all come to accept this level of deconstructing the narrative, they are inclined to blackmail all of us to think that what they consider as right is what is right. Check on Afrobarometer. Check on the Ghana Statistical Services data. The EC, only 58% of our citizens even trust them. On corruption, they perform worse than the National Democratic Congress. On management of the economy, the same. In any case, go and check where was GDP when the NDC left office. In fact, in the history of Ghana, the NDC is the only political party that has maintained for the longest time lower digit inflation since. Even in terms of employment, we had a lower rate of employment than they have. But what they come and tell you? You invite your vice president, currently flag bearer, to a media engagement, and he can look in the face of Ghanaians and tell you he has created $2.6 million, 2.6 million jobs. If we have 2.6 million jobs, then tell me, where are all the 300,000 people? Why are they at home? Today, do you know, for example, that statutory deductions in terms of SNIT are not going to the SNIT? Do you know, for example, that people's allowances, even when they go to the bank to take a loan, the Comptroller and Accountant General slaps a 3% fee on the already 27% that the salary worker is taking. And yet they are telling you that we are going to introduce what? Credit scores to people with no income, to people with no convincing income, to people with no noticeable income, people with an income on a junk status economy. How do you determine that for the people of Ghana? But they deconstruct the narrative and they convince you that because it is coming from us, it is okay. But it's not okay when it's coming from the other side. And it is these sorts of things that we must all stand up and rise up against. Because you know that going to the judiciary is the same. For the first time, we have packed the courts at all levels. 10 left, 10 right. You will get the same thing. And just use that video of her ladyship in that interaction with Speaker Bagbin's counsel. It sums it up. So that is exactly what has happened with the Electoral Commission, for example. When we were making those appointments and the noise was starting, you know, even at the time, they were still quite popular. So people were like, oh, no, you know, he must be right about this, or must be okay. Suddenly, where are the okay voices? Everybody has seen through it now. You know, Sena, I have no doubt in my mind that all the attempts, you see, they started with telling you that it was a two-region agenda. They have a strategy to win with 2 regions. Then it fell flat. Then they came back and told you, oh, don't worry at all, we are good. We have one policy that will take us to the next level. Then the policy failed. And so they came back and told you, oh, don't worry, we have a great candidate. But of course, they know they don't have a great candidate. So Akufo-Addo is out there campaigning for the not-so-great candidate. But they can tell that even with all that, the candidate is still not polling as they expect. So they go and ask President Akufo, you must come and do something to show up our candidate. But the worst part is that they attach to that candidate someone like Napo. And what is he doing? Each time he opens his mouth, and be careful, know that he's probably even speaking on advice. Every day he opens his mouth, he eats back on whatever little it is that they have. So you can tell that they have no message, they have no campaign, they have nothing beyond all the attempts to rig the election and the ballot stuffing that has become the order of the day, that now that they are caught out, they are seeking now to find legitimate ways. But I think that that legitimacy and the attempts at same have literally arrived a bit too late. Okay. I can bet you they had an opportunity. They might even go to court and seek for more time by going to file some frivolous action and getting an injunction to stem the election, to delay the election. They've tried everything, Sena. When the will of the people is up for change, there is nothing you can do. If you look at all the economic indicators, on corruption, on media freedoms, on lack of access. Look, go to the Sekendi Takoradi Municipal Assembly. One of the biggest challenges is that 68% of the homes there in the western region, home to every natural resource you can think about, do not have a toilet facility. Play back the video of our now candidate of the New Patriotic Party singing about toilets. But it was the same deconstruct. Even though the NDC had always considered toilet facilities as important, we didn't make you think that what we're doing was the end all. We thought that these are things we can do across board and do other things as well. But they made you believe that if everybody can get a toilet in any part of Ghana, is enough for us. One of the reasons we are suffering from climate change conditions is open defecation across the country. So where did that conversation about toilets in all those communities, where did it lead us to? This is the Ghana Statistical Service speaking, not the NDC Research Department. So make no mistake, everything the EC is doing is actually a playbook. And as they go along, the narrative has remained the same. Do our bidding or get lost. Listen to us or get lost. Take it or leave it. But what I want to say is that the strength of the ordinary citizen, led by the strength of an ordinary political party with broad mass appeal, is the driving force behind the change that is definitely going to come on December 07. So for us, we are focused on our campaign. Our Director for Elections, the executive of the National Democratic Congress, led by John Mahama, ought to be congratulated for doing a yeoman's job. Our national executives have been on the neck of the EC. Our Director for Elections has not slept for months, led by all the other people involved in this. We have taken it almost to the next level because we know that there is only fairness and equity if we win this election. And that once the election is won, we will now start the real deconstruct in the positive sense of the word. But make no mistake, everything Akufo-Addo does, he knows exactly what he's doing. Everything Bawumia does, he knows exactly what he's doing. Monday morning, he tells you, I'll not hand over to someone I've beaten before. But that person has beaten you too before. Tuesday morning, he tells you, oh, I actually managed to introduce this. And the person, but certainly when they first had the debate, Mahama's conversation won the day. But he will tell you that it's the opposite. The next thing you know, that they tell you, no. This is exactly what we intend to do. Suddenly they can see that even in the Ashanti region, and good morning everybody in the Ashanti region, to all our volunteers, to all our executive and all the campaign teams. John Mahama has arrived in the Ashanti region, and I know and you know that for this change to happen, each and every region under Mahama will benefit from that change because we believe in transparency, in fairness, and in equity. And we expect that we'll all go out there and cast our ballots for change and for the NDC more or less. Okay. Because we don't take moral lessons from the New Patriotic Party. Okay. We will not allow Akufo-Addo to run roughshod over us for 8 years and then foist his successor on us like he did to the MPP. When Bawumia joined the MPP, he was not a card-bearing member. He was not even a member of the party. So please make no mistake. There are even some in the MPP who want their real party back. Indeed, we heard Dr. Jahota Maklo saying that ALHAJI and co, this is not the party they envisaged. So there are some of those godfathers who may not necessarily be President Kufuor, who want their party back. Okay. And they believe that if they get their party back, our democracy is better served. Please show them the exit. Vote them out. They are red flags for all that is wrong with our democracy. Thank you.
Thank you. A few comments before I come to you, Mr. Pratt. This one says, thanks to Uncle Kwesi Pratt, Gideon, and may God continue to bless him for his honesty and altruism. I need, indeed, a few days ago, I told a friend and my wife only yesterday that I was so disappointed in two of the NDC's ads, the pork and whiskey one and the involving two children, as I considered them ridiculous and unnecessary. Save that, I want to believe that those ads may not have been sanctioned by GM. Those two ads of the NDC should be withdrawn forthwith, whether or not it was as a response to some dirty ads from other quarters as indicated by Uncle Pratt. Two wrongs do not make a right and will never make will never make, and the NDC must not, under any circumstances, mimic the wrong. That's coming from Dennis Yao Akwete, who sent that one. There's this one from Papa BC, who says, "Hi, Sena, this shortfalls thing by the EC, seriously speaking, I'm not getting it. We need to watch the EC and those who will be deployed to polling stations. The EC must be told to those working for the organizations not to wear long sleeve shirts or agbada to avoid slippage of already printed ballot papers from their long sleeve shirts. Lastly, to the headmasters and teachers of so-called Free Senior High School, your freedom is here. On the 7th December general election, vote against MPP government so that your gag mouths will be removed from 7th January 2025 and beyond. Vote for JM and the NDC period." That's from Papa BCU. Okay. There's also, okay, Kojo, back again. Please, Loki, was Alan not part of the solid Baumia team, EMT, that acquired wings and latent heat of vaporization? Just asking. If he had won the MPP primaries, would we have pupated from elephant to butterfly? Just asking you. Please tell Joyce to respect my family government. We have a stellar record with infrastructure. We have constructed 12,000 kilometers of roads, the same distance between Accra and Kathmandu, Nepal. Show respect. Mr. Pratt.
Well, at the beginning of the program, I asked the production team to give me the daily guide of Tuesday.
Okay.
I think I was wrong. So if the production team would give me the daily guide of Thursday.
Thursday. I think we should have should have it in front of you.
The daily guide of Thursday is very
one of them.
interesting.
I think it's the one close to. Oh, then the Thursday should be in front of you.
So the production team can work on that. That's fine. You know, we are only a few days to the elections. And the temptation, the temptation to talk about so many things is so very strong. But unfortunately for me, the time is so very short that I cannot afford to do that. And I would focus attention on the EC and its preparations. You see, the Electoral Commission decided that one of the most important things it ought to do for this election is to put forth an advert, television advert, which says that elections cannot be rigged in Ghana. I mean, it's so very ridiculous, it's unbelievable. The effect of this advert is to dull the participation, to dull the sense of participation of the political parties and their members in the effort to keep the elections clean. You know, elections can never be rigged. You know, just go there, cast your ballot and go home. That's what the advert says. I hope you've seen that advert.
Yes.
Now, I've watched elections over a very long period of time. I saw the 1969 elections, but I wasn't a key participant. You know. But from 1992, I've keenly participated in elections and the electoral processes. And nobody can convince me that elections in Ghana cannot be rigged. There are so many ways of rigging elections in Ghana. You know, Ben Epson of the Daily Dispatch used to do polls, okay, from the early days and so on. I don't know if he's still doing them now, you know, but he used to do polls. And in fact, they were the only polls that we used to rely on. And for the period that I followed his polls, there was no election in which you didn't find overvoting in some constituencies. Now, if you find overvoting, that is, more people vote than the number of registered voters, then that's rigging. And the Electoral Commission should have these figures which show overvoting in many of the constituencies and polling stations. Indeed, the last election petition before the Supreme Court, you understand? One of the decisions which was made by the Supreme Court was that the incidence of overvoting was not so big as to warrant, invalidating the whole result. So we've had overvoting with us for a very long time. Now, if the Electoral Commission has these figures to show that there has been overvoting, at least in some polling stations, in all the elections, for the Electoral Commission to put out such an advert is to clearly lie to the people of Ghana. Clear lie. Because how did the overvoting occur if there was no rigging? Because overvoting can occur only if there is rigging. That's one. Now, there are many ways of rigging elections. Many. And one of the ways of rigging elections is very simple. You know the stronghold of your opponent. So, before, during the elections, you go and create panic. That's a way of rigging the elections. That's voter suppression or vote suppression or whatever it is called. It's a clear way of rigging elections. It's happened in our elections several times. I mean, there have been many cases, and this year it started but died very quickly. Yeah. Every time there's going to be elections, there's a story of a secessionist movement emerging in the voter region. Soldiers are sent there. Panic is created in the voter region and so on. That's voter suppression. That's part of rigging elections. You understand? So clearly, there are so many ways of rigging elections. I mean, I can show you many other ways. I mean, on the election day, you know the strongholds of your opponents. You don't need to do a lot of things. Just get two young men to start a fight in a polling station. Say, hey, they are fighting. In an election such as this one, where the temperature is so very high and so on, two small boys fighting in a polling station, who is going to stand up there? Yes, sir. That would again lead to voter suppression and so on. And there are so many other ways. Look, in one election, I think it was in Hohoi, yes. I think this is the 1992 elections, you know. One of my friends was a parliamentary candidate. And when the results was announced, he had lost so badly. Can you believe what his polling agents did? His polling agents just pulled off the T-shirts they were wearing. And there was another party T-shirt underneath, and they joined the jubilants. So this whole engineering of trying to get your party members to be polling agents for the opposing party is part of the rigging machine. And it's happened in our history so many times. And if the Electoral Commission doesn't know this, I'm sorry, then they're not up to their game. You understand? So rigging is possible. Rigging is possible. I mean, in 1996 or thereabout, I contested parliamentary elections. You understand? And there was one polling station in Kokomimble that I didn't know about. I didn't know existed. So one of my supporters came to me and said, look, there's a polling station in this place. You go there. Do you know there's a parliamentary candidate? I was not allowed to enter that polling station. Yes. I was not allowed to enter that polling station. And it was a polling station in Kokomemble. You understand? So these things happen. Rigging is possible if you are not vigilant. And that advert put out by the Electoral Commission is false. Nobody should take them serious. Rigging is possible. The vigilance of the electorate is needed in order to ensure that the people's will is truly established. That's number one. Now, number two has to do with media coverage of the election. The Electoral Commission announced that it was going to restrict media coverage of this election. And this is the first time it has happened in our history. Media coverage has never been restricted. I mean, to the extent that at regional coalition centers, we are going to get, I think, 8 or 15.
Regional is 12, constituency is 8.
8.
Yeah.
You know, media houses, you know, at the coalition centers. Now, if you take television stations in this country. I mean, I think we have more than 300 television stations in this country or thereabout. I'm not sure of the figure. You understand? Now, as for radio stations, my goodness, multiples of hundreds and so on. So if you say that at every regional coalition center, you can only get 12 television and radio stations represented, how many are you not allowing to cover, the elections? And then, strangely enough, somehow the Electoral Commission came to the conclusion that when you talk about the media, you're only talking about radio and television. Very strange. I mean, the Electoral Commission must have a media relations officer of some sort, and the media relations officer ought to know, the spread of the media. You have newspapers, you have online platforms, you have television stations, you have radio stations, you have a news agency, and so on. So to restrict coverage to television and radio came to me as very, very strange. Now, the other problem with this decision of the Electoral Commission simply is that their constituency and regional officers should choose credible media houses and submit their names for accreditation. How competent are they to choose credible media houses? What is the yardstick? What is the criteria for choosing credible media houses? What is the criteria? You understand? So that also raised very, very important issues and so on. Now, for me, if you don't allow the media to get credible, accurate, correct information and so on, what you do is that the media will pick from anywhere they can find the information, and that can be very detrimental to the exercise. And I was really worried that the Electoral Commission came up with this decision, especially when the Commission's letter said something to the effect that in the wisdom of the Commission, it was taking these measures. And I was wondering what kind of wisdom, would lead to such conclusions and so on. The wisdom of the Commission, my goodness, what wisdom. But that was the wisdom of the Commission, you understand? Now, since then, the issue has been raised by the West Africa Media Foundation. I think it's been raised by the Ghana Journalists Association, GIBA, and others. And I'm hoping that this question of accreditation will be dealt with. The Ghana Journalists Association has suggested that there should be unfettered access to all polling stations, to all constituency coalition centers and regional coalition centers for all media, unfettered access for all media. And I'm in full agreement, with the Ghana Journalists Association. This would help to bring about some measure, of transparency and so on. Now, the other problem which has come up has to do with the membership of the Electoral Commission. Membership of the Electoral Commission. At least I know of one case where a member of the commission is a self-confessed card-bearing member of the New Patriotic Party. Self-confessed. I've seen videos of him on television threatening to do everything possible to make the New Patriotic Party win election. Now, if you place such a member, if you appoint such a person as a member of the commission, the credibility of the elections is destroyed ab initio. From the very beginning, the credibility of the elections is destroyed. Now, I do know that many efforts have been made in order to get this gentleman, Professor something, to resign or be sacked. The president has refused to act. The Council of State wrote and said that it wasn't within its powers, to do anything about it and so on. The National Peace Council, which is putting pieces of paper in front of presidential candidates to sign, does not see this as a threat. You understand? So you have a card-bearing member, not just a card-bearing member, one who has vowed to do everything possible for the NPP to win elections, sitting on the Electoral Commission. Now, that does irreparable damage to the credibility of the Commission. The first time I raised this, somebody said that, he asked for him, he doesn't care at all. And that if President Mahama comes to power, he can appoint Dr. Tony Edu as a member of the Electoral Commission. He will not complain because he believes that Dr. Tony Edu will do a good job. Master, it's not about the integrity of the individual who is appointed there. It's about the public perception which develops from that appointment. You understand? And I'm really worried about that. Now, there have been a few other issues which are worrisome. And you all saw the publications of a story about a gentleman who is in charge of a very critical technical part of the EC's work, who is the direct son of a leading member of the New Patriotic Party. That also raises substantial questions about what is happening, you know, at the Electoral Commission, and whether indeed the Electoral Commission can be trusted, you know, to do a good job. Of course, there are statements which have been made by some commissioners which are extremely worrying, and one commissioner, for example, directly, it's quoted, I heard him directly, his own voice, say that the NDC is a threat to the country's democracy. Now, if you have a commissioner, electoral commissioner, who believes that the NDC is a threat to democracy in Ghana, how can such a person be trusted, you know, to handle the affairs of the elections and so on? That, again, extremely, you know, worrying for me. And then Sena, was it 2 days ago or so, there was a report of something, a bag or something which contains, you know, ballot papers, and the seal on one of them had been broken. How was the seal broken? How could the seal have been broken? Again, that raises substantial issues about the elections and how credible the outcome may be. It raises substantial issues, you know, that needs to be raised and spoken about and so on. So we can put that one also aside. I'm not sure if you guys have been following Alorga Akatapori, yes, former member of the PNDC, who has written extensively about the vulnerability of the EC's system, and has written so many things about the vulnerabilities. And one of the vulnerabilities he identified was that, look, he went to register only recently and got an unsolicited text message, and the implications of that on the safety of the data of those who register, and even access to the data and so on. Now, I do know that he has protested to the Electoral Commission. He's called for investigations. He's also written a letter to the Data Protection Agency and so on. Up to now, there's been no response whatsoever. And these are very worrying issues that he's raising. He has raised another issue about the app. Is it the app that is used for checking, you know, voter registration and so on? And he's saying that, look, it can be easily demonstrated. I mean, if you take if you go through the process, and you see, let's say that your voter registration number ends with 332. Mm-hmm. If you use your phone and you enter 332, it gives you the details that you require. Now, if you change it and make it 331, it will give you the details of 331, and so on. Now, this is a vulnerability, clear vulnerability, you understand, which needs to be addressed. That has also not been addressed yet. And I think that somebody, the relevant institutions and so on, need to take Alorga Akatapori very seriously on the issues that he has raised. Unfortunately, from being a member of the PNDC, he's now grown to become a major expert on IT. You know, and I would have even thought that his skills would have been required, you know, by the political parties and by the election agencies and so on, but nobody is using him, and he's just fruiting around. But on his own, He has identified these vulnerabilities and so on. Now, there's another problem which hasn't been addressed adequately, and it's simply the question of the machines, the BDRs, and how they are disposed of. Remember that some was found in Insawam and so on. So what happened? How were they disposed of? The Electoral Commission says that they were disposed of in an auction. Should they have been disposed of in an auction, given what they can be used for, and so on? Huge question, about that and so on. Now, we are being told that, look, if we ought to be patriotic citizens and so on, you just go to the polling station, you vote, and then you go home. And if you like, you come back in the evening. My friend, I've seen elections in Ghana before. I've seen elections in Ghana before. And that advice, I think, is bad advice. I mean, to the extent that it can lead to all kinds of problems. We know that what happens in the polling stations all the time, There have even been issues about where the political party representatives sit. Sometimes they are placed so far away that they don't see what is happening. Okay? They cannot be part of what is happening. They cannot verify anything, and there can be many problems, associated with that. My brother, let me tell you something quite honestly. I say this honestly. I have absolute confidence in the Inspector General of Police.
Okay.
I'm saying this as honestly as I can. Look, since Dampare became Inspector General of Police, we've conducted a number of elections, by-elections mainly. And in all, the performance of the police has been excellent. As in not. Who would challenge me that his performance was excellent? All the rigging schemes were nipped in the bud. He himself took personal charge of the process and so on. And as in not, is one of the cleanest by-elections we have had in this country. Then there's this one in Ashanti, John Kuma's constituency.
Ejiso, okay.
Ejiso. Who would tell me that the Ejiso by-election was not clean? And so on. So if you look at all the elections which have been conducted at the time that he has been Inspector General of Police, they have been excellent. Security has been excellent. No doubt at all about that. So it provides a basis for believing in his integrity. And because he's leader of an institution, it is possible to extend that belief in his personal integrity also to the institution that he leads. There's a gap. But there'll always be a gap. His personal integrity, I think, is clear. The problem with this election is that it's not like a by-election. The scale is much, much bigger than a by-election. In a by-election, he moves his people to Asen North. He's personally there. It's a small geographical area. It's controllable and so on. Now, it's a nationwide affair. So there can be some doubt as to whether what he did in Asen North can be replicated throughout the country. That's legitimate doubt. You understand? That's legitimate doubt. But be that as it may, to have an Inspector General of Police who is ready to shed partisanship and to do things which will bring about some level of credibility and so on, it's most welcome. Okay, it's most welcome. And I'm confident that some things may be useful. I do know that special security arrangements have been made for the media houses. I'm sure you are aware.
I'm aware.
And because there are special security arrangements, I'm hesitant about commenting about them so openly and publicly. I know that the Private Newspapers Publishers Association, the Ghana Journalists Association, and JIBA, and also the Online Publishers Association and so on, have said that they were not consulted and that the arrangements should have been done with them and so on. Maybe it has some merit, it could have some merit and so on. But as an operator of a media house or a number of media houses, of 2 media houses and so on, I note that this is the first time such an exercise has been done. Since 1992, the first time that special security arrangements are being made for media houses. Now, if you look at the security arrangements which are being made without going into the details and so on, it can also become a mechanism for control. Because if they are here with you, they see everything you do and so on. They see who comes in, they see who goes out, they are able to detect your modus operandi and so on. So it can become a mechanism for control. Even as it can become a mechanism for control, it also assures you of a certain level of security. You understand? I mean, people who take bodyguards from the police and so on, they take a big risk. If you are an opposition member of parliament and you want a police bodyguard and so on, do you know the report has been sent into his headquarters? Do you know the report is filing for NIB? Now they call it NIB and so on. Do you know the report is filing? But if you don't accept it, in the event that you are attacked by robbers and hooligans and hoodlums and so on, you will take the responsibility and so on. So it's a balancing act. And I think that, you know, we will take it like that. It's better to have some security or nothing at all. And we will thank the police administration for coming up with such an elaborate, you know, security protection measure, you know, for all the media houses and so on. Now, one of the biggest problems we've had with election results has been how the pink sheet is filled and signed. Who fills the pink sheets, who signs the pink sheets, and what is done with the pink sheet. Okay. In the past, there have been many cases or rumors of party agents accepting cash and signing blank pink sheets and so on. That's a problem. How the parties propose to deal with this, I'm not sure. You know, but it will be interesting if the Electoral Commission itself would insist that as soon as the figures are put on the pink sheet and signed right there at the polling station, they should be pasted on the wall. Right there, I mean, right there, it's counted in the presence of the public. 1, 2, everybody sees the count. It should immediately go on the pink sheet. It should immediately receive signatures, and it should immediately be placed on the wall. This is a matter of it's a matter of minutes. It should be on the wall. Now, if it's on the wall, anybody with a smartphone can take a picture.
Anything with camera.
With camera and so on, we can take pictures, and that becomes credible evidence and makes it impossible for people to go and change pink sheets much later and so on. Now, I used to work in the strong room, and I'm so very disappointed that the operations of the strong room have been dismantled, because it was the best guarantee. Best guarantee. Look, the results are counted at the constituency collation center. They are tallied, they are put on paper and so on, and then they are faxed directly to the strong room. Directly to the strong room, where all the parties and independent candidates and so on have their agents seated. They have 2 agents each. When it's taken from the fax machine, it doesn't go to the electoral commissioner. It comes straight to the party agents. So amongst us, we look at the results, check if it's the mathematics, the arithmetic is proper. You understand? 2 + 2 must be 4. We check those kind of things immediately. And then we place calls to the party agents and representatives in the constituencies for confirmation. Now, when we've done all of these checks, we sign the sheet of results. It's only after all of us have agreed on the results, signed the sheets, that it is finally taken to Afarijan. Afarijan was then the commissioner. So Afarijan doesn't announce any result which has not been signed by all the representatives of the political parties in the strong room. Do you see the guarantee that it gives? So if there's any doubt, if any political party agent in the strong room refuses to sign a result, it means that there has to be investigation immediate. So the consultations and investigation goes on until everybody has signed. This system has been dismantled. My goodness, for what purpose? Who did that? For what reason? This system, excellent system, has been dismantled. I cannot believe it. So you see that in the past, the disputes about election results were minimal. The disputes occurred in the strong room. And once they were resolved in the strong room, finished. There was one instance where I think it was Comrade Japan and others came into the strong room, and the NDC chaps suspected that some hanky-panky game was going on. They raised a lot of hell. There was a lot of heat in the strong room. Afarijan walks in. Within minutes, the issues had been resolved, and the results had been announced to the satisfaction of all the political parties. Why did this system change? Who changed it and for what purpose? I don't know. So it's extremely worrying. Now, I want to make 2 or 3 very short statements. One is that, look, it is the duty of every Ghanaian, the abiding duty of every Ghanaian, policeman, soldier, Boy Scout, a girls' brigade, whatever, every Ghanaian, all of us, to ensure that the people's will is established in this election. We all have a duty to prevent rigging of this election. All of us, every Ghanaian, whether you're a trotro driver or mate, whether you're a bookman or whatever, whether you're a soldier, general or sergeant or corporal, all of us as citizens of Ghana have a responsibility and a duty to ensure that this election is not rigged. The Constitution gives us, the Constitution that we adopted for ourselves gives us the right, actually enjoins us to make sure that our mandate is not played with by anybody. You understand? I've read what happened at Ayawaso West Wogon. I've seen the victims, and I've seen videos of those who caused the problem. And Master, there were not more than 40 people wearing khakis and carrying pistols. If we defeated British colonialism, we can defeat a ragtag army of rascals carrying pistols. Who are they? We defeated British colonialism at the time that British dominated the waves. Do you know what it meant when they said that British dominated the waves and so on? It was one of the strongest armies in the world. We defeated them and got our independence. We fought in the Sagranti War and so on. So we should not be intimidated by these hoodlums. You know, and they are really hoodlums. Hoodlums in khaki uniforms. And then they wear face masks and so on. They want to look frightening. They don't frighten anybody. Anybody thinking about organizing hoodlums, the type of which caused mayhem at Ayawaso West Wogon, should think again. Because the people of Ghana will face them boot for boot and neutralize them. In this election, the will of the people will count. Nobody must make any foolish attempt to rig this election. Because those hoodlums will be defeated. And no, sir, I do not make this statement lightly at all. We should all aim at organizing peaceful elections. Credible, transparent, peaceful elections. That should be our aim. But even as that is our aim, if there is a group of people, political party or whatnot, who think that they can play hanky-panky games, we should be ready for them. To the extent that the law allows us, we should not allow any hoodlums to steal our mandate. And I believe that in this election, nobody is going to succeed in stealing our mandate. So that's a clear message. Now, the Electoral Commission, I have a piece of advice for the Electoral Commission. The last election results. One of the reasons why there was unease about the results which was announced, one of the reasons why, the matter even ended up in court and so on, was the poor arithmetic skills of the commission. The whole Electoral Commission of lawyers and experts and so on could not do simple addition. So they announced one result and then you see, it said, hey, it's more than 100%. It says, wait. Okay. And then they go back and come with another figure. They say, no, it's not the figure, it's another figure and so on. We need a competent Electoral Commission for this election. And we are not asking for knowledge about how to send spacecrafts to the moon. That's not what we are asking for. When we talk about competence, we are asking for an Electoral Commission which can add 1, 2, and 3, and 4 and get the correct answer once. That's what we are asking for. Or are you asking for something more? No. So when we talk about competence, it's the competence that you can find in a class 3 girl. Primary school class 3 girl has that competence. If a primary school class 3 girl has that competence, why can't the Electoral Commission get that competence? After all the bodyguards we give them, after all the 4-wheel drives we give them, after all the comforts we give them and so on, they cannot do simple addition. Why are they there if they cannot do simple addition? So we demand a certain level of competence. Okay? We demand a certain level of competence. Now, I believe very strongly that all these bishops and archbishops and now archangels and so on are also involved in the art of rigging elections. And you know why I believe that? These predictions, what is it meant to do? The predictions, what is it meant to do? It's meant to shape public opinion.
Prophecy.
Prophecies and so on. It's meant to shape public opinion. So, these charlatans, you understand? And most of them are charlatans. Complete charlatans. These charlatans. They go into their holy rooms, is that what they call them and so on? And they go and sniff things and so on, they get hazy. And then they come out and talk nonsense about God speaking to them and telling them who is going to win the elections and so on. They must stop. They are a major problem for elections in this country. Now, if the prophet says that, and these days, you know that they travel to heaven.
They go
to heaven and come back. There was one of them who the other time was saying that, look, he went to heaven and he saw God and saw Jesus the Christ. And he told Jesus that this Jesus, you didn't behave well, that's why you were crucified. He went to heaven to talk to Jesus and told Jesus how he misbehaved and that is why he was crucified. These charlatans, absolute charlatans and so on, They should serve us with their useless prophecies and so on. It is part of the problem of the elections.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, to be very frank, we've run out of time. Dr. David Percy, I can see you have a... But quickly, I'm coming. Dr. David Percy says, I see you on the state of preparation by Electoral Commission towards election 2024. What has been absent from all recent conversations is recognition that since 2018 and the insertion of Jean Mensa as chairperson, our so-called independent EC became a direct agency, an extension of a new patriotic party and the Jubilee House. Matters are decided by the MPP in ways that the MPP believes and expects will advance its electoral fortunes. EC officials, so-called, merely inform Ghanaians what has been decided. The latest example was the attempt to limit media presence at the coalition centers. Briefly.
Sena, to add to what Sena has reiterated here, concerns are mounting on issues of some sentiments or some statements, I would say statements that were made by a certain military officer who is at Achase here, the Jungle Warfare Training School and all that. And already looking at the precedent that was set in 2020, where 8 innocent citizens of this country were murdered in Techima South without anyone being apprehended and brought to justice. And we have today the same government that led us in 2020 trying to use the military against the people and trying to distort the electoral process. We are sending them a caution. And I say that, I mean, my grandfather also served in the army. But the discipline of our men and women in uniform today, especially the army, is not what we have or what we have experienced in the past. And you shouldn't be surprised, because if you have the CDS, who is one way or the other related to the president, and here is his in-law, the chief of army staff, who was his former bodyguard, who was promoted in a strange manner, which brought a lot of rifts in the military, then there is a problem going into this election. And we are calling on the leadership of the military to behave. We will not tolerate any recalcitrant acts by the military to subvert the will of the people or to distort the electoral process.
Okay. Thank you, Doc.
My brother, just to make you calm down. The Ghana Armed Forces is not made up of people from outer space. It's made up of Ghanaians. Exactly. They are like us. Exactly. You understand? So I don't think that the army as an institution will misbehave. Yeah. It will not misbehave in this election. It will do what all of us as reasonable Ghanaians would do. Okay. There may be a few bad elements in the armed forces as there are a few bad elements in the civilian population. There may be a few bad elements in the police as there are a few bad elements in the prison service and so on. What we ought to be doing is to say that the good elements in all the security services should make sure that the reputation of the institutions is not dragged into the mud by the small number of recalcitrant, deviant. Okay, let me leave it at that.
Thank you.
And I'm sure that will happen. I am sure that there are officers and men in the Ghana Armed Forces who would not allow the name of the institution to be misused in rigging of elections. They are like us. We are not better than the people in the army. After all, those you see in army uniforms are civilians like us. The only difference is that they have had a certain training and they wear a certain uniform. They are like us. Okay. So my brother, everybody should be assured, rest assured, that if anybody dreams about using the armed forces to mess up in this election, no problem. I will say
thank you. Army uniforms and military cars by this government, they give their party, I would say, foot soldiers and what do you call vigilante groups. They let them, and we saw that in the transformation report.
Yes.
So,
Unfortunately, I have
it's
to
an issue,
close.
Sena.
I have to close.
And we're calling the government to order that, and the military leadership, that they shouldn't allow this government to use them and to use their men and their leadership in manipulating this election and ensuring that this election does not.
Master,
Thank you.
Don't destroy what I've said.
Thank you.
Leave it at what I have
Exactly.
Thank you
said.
very
Don't
much.
destroy what I've
Thank
said.
you very much.
Exactly.
Thank you. Belated happy birthday to Tijani Banamasi, who is lead producer of the program. Celebrated his birthday about 2 days ago. Nothing had no action. Also, belated happy birthday to.
Why are you announcing Tijani's birthday?
Just wishing. And also a belated happy birthday to a very good friend of Kwame Kwesi Jr., former President John Dramani Mahama, celebrated his birthday on the 29th. Belated a happy birthday.
They are all my friends.
Yes, I know.
That's the unfortunate situation with their friends. All of them are my friends.
No, but a big thank you to you.
But Mr. Pratt knows that all his friends are not exactly the same.
No, that one is true. They are different.
A big thank you to you, Kwame Kwesi Jr., who is General Secretary of the Socialist Movement of Ghana. Nice to see you, Doc, for the very first time. Dr. Ramsey Inusa, who is a member of the Movement for Change communication team. And it was nice to see Mrs. Joyce Bar Mukhtari, who is spokesperson for the John Dramani Mahama campaign. After many months of trying, she decided to grace us with her presence. And if social Facebook media and Facebook and YouTube are anything to go by, they say you were God mode today on the program. Well, we are back. Hey, we are not back on 7th December, actually. 7th December, coverage of the polls, live from Pan-African Television. We'll come back after the elections, of course, you see us. So, vote well. We'll see you.
He has labored, he has suffered to lead his people